Ike is a powerful magician who serves as a commander in the Demon Lord's army. With his skill and power, he has become an invaluable member of the demon army, but there's just one problem: he is secretly a human. During a war, the orc troops are able to break through the walls of a castle thanks to some well-placed explosions near the base of the wall which Ike provided them with, and as all this is going on, he is watching from above along with the orc leader, who is greatly pleased with the results of his troops' invasion after following the advice of Ike. However, Ike isn't surprised by the outcome at all, since victory was all but assured once he was assigned to oversee this operation. Inside the castle grounds, the humans and demons are locked in deadly combat, but the demons are much better equipped to win with their innate strength, so the human soldiers are being slaughtered. And while all this is going on, the Knight Captain is up in the castle, watching his men die one by one from the safety of a castle window and probably regretting the day he chose to sign up as a knight. Just then, he realizes he is not alone in the room, so he turns around and finds that Ike has somehow managed to sneak in. The Knight Captain knows he's pretty much screwed now, so he turns to face Ike and asks who he is. Ike introduces himself as the commander of the Demon Lord's 7th Undead Brigade, and he tells the Knight Commander he only has a few options left. His soldiers are nearly all dead, so Ike tells him he likes this territory and he wants it, so we can do this the easy way or the hard way. The choice is yours. The Knight Captain ain't going out like a wuss, so he tells Ike that none of those options work for him as he lunges forward for a desperate attack. But Ike wasn't surprised by this at all, since he already expected to have to do it the hard way. He quickly casts a point-blank spell which strikes the Knight Captain and incapacitates him. Ike has officially won this war, but when the orc leader comes into the room to congratulate him on his victory, and while the normal thing to do for a demon commander at this point would be to execute all the surviving members of the army, but Ike has other plans as he instructs the orc leader to provide first aid for the Knight Commander as well as any humans that surrendered. Ike was being watched by a witch through her crystal ball, and she is surprised that he was able to take down Castle Arsenal with just a single brigade and a week of prep time, so she's interested in the potential Ike shows. Back at the castle, Ike creates a barrier around himself so he can avoid being watched further, and once he finally has some privacy, he thinks to himself that he feels guilty about hurting so many people even if it was necessary to win the battle. He will never truly get used to the bloodshed associated with war, because while it should be second nature to a demon, Ike is only a human in disguise. His teacher, Romberg, was a great mage, but he also knew a lot about the world and the advanced civilization that once lived in it. One day, Romberg found Ike as a baby and decided to take him in just for fun, and over the course of the years Ike spent with Romberg, he was taught all the magic and knowledge Romberg had at his disposal. But Romberg's last wish before he died of old age was that Ike should never tell anyone about the ancient civilization, since people would bring disaster if they knew about it. There was also one other thing Romberg had asked of him, and it was for Ike to never let himself be seen without his robe or mask, because if he is ever found out to be a human, the Demon Lord wouldn't spare him. From that day forward, Ike has never taken off his mask, and even now, he is only able to remove it because of the powerful barrier he erected around the room. With the barrier up, it prevents anyone from entering the room without his permission, but unfortunately, it doesn't apply to people who are already inside the room. Ike looks down and sees the maid who had been hiding under the desk, and she begs him not to kill her since she won't speak a word to anyone about his secret, but then she accidentally hits her head on the desk and falls over. Ike checks on her and she seems to still be alive, but he really wishes she wasn't, since he had managed to keep his identity secret for over 20 years at this point. So why does the first person to find out his secret have to be a clumsy maid? Just then, the orc leader knocks at the door because he wants to talk to Ike, so he will have to deal with the maid problem later. Outside, the orc leader tells Ike that they have managed to seize the castle successfully, but he finds it strange that Ike is letting so many humans live. Ike tells him it isn't a problem since the new Demon Lord doesn't particularly care about your kill count as long as you get the job done. The orc understands, but he and the others were hoping to slaughter all the humans and burn the village to the ground, but Ike questions what the purpose of doing that would be, especially since if they kill everyone, then there will be no one left to pay taxes. Arsenal is a trading city, so who would do all the trading if they killed all the humans? Just then, Ike and the orc run into a couple of humans who wish to speak to Ike. The orc begins yelling at them for daring to speak to the great Ike directly, but Ike says it is fine and asks the village chief to speak. The chief has accepted that the town is now under the control of the demon army, so he wants to know how much they are expecting to pay in taxes to the demon lord. Ike tells him they can just pay the normal amount they always paid, but he makes it clear that if any of them ever resist the demon lord for any reason, then there would be no mercy for them. Just then, Ike notices something is wrong, and a moment later, he gets teleported into a dark room with a giant monster standing behind him with devious intentions. Ike jumps out of the way to evade the incoming backshots, and it looks like this isn't the first time something like this has happened since Ike complains to the witch that he had asked her not to summon him out of nowhere like this. Since he is already here, Ike decides to take out the monster by using his staff to cast a powerful spell, and he destroys the golem in a single hit. The witch is impressed with Ike's ability since she was pretty confident in the strength of that golem, and we finally find out that her name is Sapphiro. She is Ike's direct superior in the demon army, and also the only demon who knows that he is actually a human. Ike asks her to please just send a messenger next time she wants to talk to him, but she finds it entertaining to catch him off guard with teleportation. Ike just accepts that he's going to have to keep dealing with Sapphiro's BS, so he asks her if she summoned him here because of the battle with Arsenum. She tells him that's not why she called him here, since her familiars couldn't have told her everything she needed to know about the battle. She is perfectly fine with how Ike took control of the city and how he chose to spare the humans, but then Ike wonders why she bothered summoning him at all, so Sapphiro informs him that Demon Lord Darakutin wishes to see him in person. Ike is shocked to hear this, since he would be the first brigade commander to ever be given the honor of meeting him, but Ike still wonders why Darakutin would want to see him. Sapphiro assumes it must be because of Ike's impressive feat of capturing Arsenum in only 1 week, so she's going to take him to the Demon Lord's castle now. Ike wasn't expecting to have to go immediately, but he puts his hand on Sapphiro's shoulder and she teleports them both away. Meanwhile, back in the castle, the maid has finally regained consciousness. She gets up and tries to walk away, but as she does so, she finds that she is still trapped inside Ike's barrier. She knows there's no way she's getting through a barrier like this, so she looks around the room and finds a plate of food along with a note left by Ike. He wrote for her to eat the food and wait for him to return, so the maid does exactly that, and it's so delicious that she ends up pouncing on the plate. At the same time, Ike and Sapphiro have just arrived at the Demon Lord's castle, and the strong miasma surrounding the castle is slightly affecting Ike since he is human, but he powers through it and keeps walking towards the castle. At the gate, there are guards posted, so Ike asks Sapphiro if the guards check everyone who comes to the castle, and she informs him that they indeed inspect everyone who comes here. Ike is now worried since his identity will be found out as soon as the guard makes him remove his mask, but Sapphiro tells him she will handle it. She uses some of her magic to surround Ike in a terrifying aura, and once he reaches the guards, they have nothing but respect for his power. They know Ike is the grandson of Romberg. And with training from such a great mage, it is no wonder to them that Ike is so powerful. Ike and Sapphiro are allowed entry into the castle with no further questions, and after a while of walking, Ike asks how long it's going to take before they reach the audience room. So she tells him they are almost there, but Ike is really wishing he could fly like Sapphiro in a situation like this. He has always been jealous of her flight magic, and while he can use the spell itself, he doesn't have as much control over it as she does, so the most he can do is jump really high with it. They eventually reach the audience room, so Sapphiro tells Ike to wait outside a little while she talks to the Demon Lord first. Once she heads inside, Ike thinks about how the current Demon Lord, Darakutin, managed to turn the war around and give the demons the upper hand simply by participating in a single battle. He is the strongest demon, and rumors speak of him as a cruel and cold lord, so he would probably kill anyone whom he grew to dislike. On the flip side, though, he is also known to be one who can recognize talent in spite of whatever weaknesses one may have. His new approach to running things revolutionized the demon army, since demons are naturally born with the instinct to fight among themselves at the slightest inconvenience. Darakutin, who accomplished all of that in his time as the Demon Lord, and now Ike has to meet him. Ike hears Sapphiro calling for him to enter, so he walks into the throne room, and as he greets the Demon Lord, he is surprised to find that the Demon Lord is actually a girl. Darakutin praises Ike for his ability to capture Arsenum in only 1 week, and he thanks her for the kind words, but he doesn't think he deserves that much credit. The Darakutin finds Ike's humility quite odd, as it reminds her of how a human would act, and Ike immediately regrets opening his mouth since he almost blew his cover just now. Luckily, Sapphiro recovers for him and explains that Ike was raised by the great magician Romberg, and Romberg was known to be quite humble, so that would explain where Ike learned humility from. She also thinks that Ike might be smarter than she had initially thought, and thus chose to avoid needlessly killing the humans even after he conquered Arsenum. But right now, Ike is kind of regretting the fact that he didn't kill those humans like a regular demon would, since it is drawing unwanted attention to him now. He asks for permission to speak and explains to Darrow that he spared the humans because while they may fear terror, they won't obey it for long, so he felt it would be better to avoid killing them as much as possible so they can keep their sense of normalcy and remain productive. Darrow asks if that is the opinion Romberg held as well, and Ike says yes. He has only been speaking with her for a few minutes now, but he can already tell that Darrow must have knowledge about the ancient civilizations that Romberg told Ike about, and she used that knowledge to form the demon army into what it is today. Darrow teleports from her throne and lands in front of Ike, saying that he is definitely different from most demons, but the next time they meet, she would like to see what his face looks like under that mask. She then teleports behind him and says she expects to see more good results from him in the future, and as soon as she is out of the room, Ike collapses out of nervousness. Sapphiro makes fun of him for being so nervous in front of Darrow, but while maybe a strong magician, he is still a wimp. What had him so nervous was the fact that Darrow could tell that the mask wasn't his real face, but at least she doesn't know that he's a human yet. Sapphiro also mentions that he is getting a reward from Darrow for his accomplishments, although she wouldn't exactly classify it as a reward. A while later, Ike teleports back to Arsenum to check on the maid, and he sees that she has eaten all the food he left for her. So he looks around and finds her sleeping behind the desk. He wakes her up, and as soon as she realizes that Ike is back, she begins begging for her life and asking Ike not to hurt her. Ike tells her to calm down since he doesn't plan on killing her, but first, he wants to know what her name is. She tells him she is called 13 since slaves here are only referred to by their numbers, but her mother used to call her Sadie. Ike tells Sadie that he can't just let her go now that she knows he is human, but she promises that she will never speak a word about his real identity to anyone. Ike believes she will keep her mouth shut, but to make sure she doesn't let the secret slip, he tells her that she has to serve as his maid from now on. Sadie is more than happy to be his maid if it means she gets to live, so it's a done deal. The next day, Ike is officially crowned ruler of a place called Avalia's, and the previous day, Sapphiro had informed him that this was the reward Darrow had prepared for him. It's a town on the front lines, so Ike's job will be to rebuild the town and bring in double its tax revenue. Ike doesn't like it, especially since Sapphiro was the one that conquered the town and she absolutely decimated all the walls, leaving it with no protection. Since they are out on the front lines, they need to have city walls ready in case the human army attacks, but when Ike asks Jiren how long it will take to rebuild, he says it'll be 6 months at best. 6 months is way too much time for a city to go without a wall, but with only human laborers, there is no way they'll be able to do it any quicker than that. However, Ike believes he has a way to get it down in only 1 month, and that is to use both demon and human laborers. Jiren has never seen humans and demons working together like this, and Ike even came up with the idea to have shifts of only 8 hours, so the wall repairs can keep going 24 hours around the clock, and he also pays the laborers a decent wage to keep their morale up. So Jiren is convinced that Ike is the demon army's greatest asset, and he is bound to eventually become the next demon lord. The war between the humans and demons continues, and at the moment, the demons have the upper hand, so Darrow-Kuten is rather pleased. However, their reports show that the humans are in the middle of making an alliance with a neighboring kingdom, and if they do, it may turn the tide of the war, so Darrow-Kuten decides to entrust the success of their attack to Ike. Meanwhile, in the human kingdom, the knight known as White Rose Alistair has been summoned to aid the kingdom in taking back Avalia's, as they can't afford to lose another stronghold. Once her assignment is issued, she leaves to go fulfill it, and at the same time, Ike and Sadie are both in the kingdom on a mission as well, but Sadie has gotten a little distracted by a scam game. The man says all she needs to do is guess where the ball is located, and if she is right, then he will double whatever amount of money she bets. Sadie makes her choice, so the man asks her to place her bet, but unfortunately, Sadie doesn't have any money to place a bet with since Ike doesn't trust her with finances. The con artist is enraged that she wasted his time like this, but then he takes a second look at Sadie and says she can pay him another way if she loses. Just then, all the cups begin floating in the air, and it is revealed that the ball was never under any of them to begin with, so all the other people who lost money to the man become enraged and threaten him to get their money back. In the middle of the commotion, Ike pulls Sadie away and tells her she isn't meant to leave his side as his maid, so she apologizes, but she was just so curious. Just then, she notices that Ike is in a new outfit, so Ike explains that they are on a mission to scout out the enemy, so he couldn't come here dressed in his demon disguise. They begin to walk through town, and as they do so, they see a platoon of soldiers walking through the streets, and that's all that Ike needed to see to confirm that the kingdom is indeed forming an alliance. Alliances like these have been formed 3 times in the past, and each time, it resulted in the demon lord being defeated and the army being pushed back to the castle. Sadie is worried the demon army might be defeated again due to this alliance, but Ike expected her to be hoping for the downfall of the demons since she is pretty much a prison right now. Sadie explains that since her mother was a slave in human society, she would never be treated as anything other than a slave and would probably end up like the destitute kids over there. In that case, I tell Sadie that she doesn't need to worry since the current demon army is the strongest and wisest it has ever been, so they aren't going to lose so easily. They continue walking through the street when Ike hears someone yelling for both of them to stop, so he turns around and finds that it's the con artist who's trying to confront them. He is pissed that Ike ruined his perfectly good scam, So he brought this big guy so he could rob Ike as payback for what he did. Ike looks around and sees there are no people nearby, so he decides it'll be fine to teach the con artist a little lesson. In an instant, Ike casts a spell to freeze the big guy's legs in place and follows it up with several icicles pointed at the con artist. The con artist demands that Ike remove the ice so that he can continue robbing him, but Ike just stabs him in the shoulder to show that he isn't scared to hurt him if he doesn't comply. The man finally understands the situation he is in and agrees to tell Ike anything he wants to know, so Ike asks him what all the soldiers in town are for, since they all seem to be in quite a hurry. The man initially says he doesn't know anything, but Ike threatens to kill him immediately, so he coughs up some info about the Alliance and how the Rosaria army is eager to earn some war valor for themselves before the Alliance gets involved. I can understand why they would want to do this, since a higher kill count automatically earns you more respect at any strategy meetings held. However, if they happen to fail in their mission, it would put Rosaria in a terrible position. Ike asks where they are going to launch their attack, so the con man tells him that there is only one location they could possibly be targeting right now, and that would be Avalia's. As far as the reports say, Avalia's currently has a huge hole in its walls, so it is guaranteed to be poorly defended. Ike now has a good grasp on the situation at hand, and since the con man gave him some useful info, he leaves him alone. However, he never said he would get rid of the ice though. Once they return to Ike's office, he sits at his desk to finish up some paperwork, and Sadie brings him some tea to help relax him. Just then, the demon girl bursts into the room and demands to know where Ike has been for the past few hours, since she was getting really worried about him. Ike calmly explains that he was busy scouting out the kingdom of Rosaria, but his reasonable answer doesn't make her feel better, so she starts going after Sadie and questions why Ike has a human beside him. Sadie introduces herself as Ike's maid, but the girl dismisses her and casually calls Sadie an ugly bitch, after which she then offers to become Ike's maid instead. Sadie is pissed at this point, so she tells the girl to get her hands off Ike's, since he is too tired to be dealing with hoes right now. This begins a long argument between the two, with both of them accusing each other of trying to seduce Ike, and Ike is smart enough not to get himself involved. Meanwhile, Rosaria's army has gathered outside of Valius and are getting ready to attack. They find it odd that there are almost no guards standing near the walls, but they assume it must just be due to their lack of manpower to effectively defend their stronghold. They soon inform Alistair that they have completed the preparations for the attack and are ready to fire on her command. So Alistair gives the order to fire. However, as soon as she does, several skeleton soldiers emerge from the ground and surround Alistair's forces. The soldiers prepare to defend the siege gear, since mere skeletons should be no match for them. But all of a sudden, one of the soldiers gets shot out of nowhere, and it all goes downhill for the humans from there. Alistair sees that there's no way for them to win this battle anymore, so she orders for an immediate retreat. Ike and Giron were watching the whole thing from the top of the wall, and they commend Alistair for making the smart decision to retreat, although the only reason they managed to win was because of Ike's reconnaissance mission earlier. However, while they weren't paying attention, an assassin had managed to sneak up behind Ike and fire an arrow straight into Ike's back, causing him to fall to the ground and pass out. Meanwhile, the general has just been informed that Alistair was forced to retreat from battle due to unforeseen circumstances. The soldier tries to explain that the demon army had prepared an ambush in advance of their arrival, but the general is having none of it and orders Alistair to be jailed for losing. The soldier realizes that's a stupid move, so he tries to explain that Alistair is one of the greatest commanders in the kingdom, and he is saying he wants to throw her in jail for a single loss. That will only ruin the morale of the soldiers and affect their future battles negatively. But the general doesn't care and insists that Alistair must be punished for failing the mission he sent her on. Back at Avalius, Ike wakes up in bed after recovering from his wound, but he finds Sapphiro sleeping next to him, so he has a lot of questions to ask. First off, he wants to know why Sapphiro is in bed with him, but she avoids the question and says she saved his life, but she's making the situation sound very sus though. Eventually, Ike convinces her to be serious and tell him what happened, since he doesn't remember how he ended up like this, so she informs Ike that she healed him after he got shot in the back with an arrow. It was a devastating injury, but thanks to her healing, there shouldn't even be a scar left by now. Moving on, Sapphiro mentions that the reports say not a single human was killed during the attack. She knows Ike is averse to killing people when he doesn't need to, but he may earn the suspicion of the Demon Lord again if he keeps acting this way. Ike understands Sapphiro's point, but he is trying to find a way for humans and demons to live together without needing to fight, so needless killing would only serve to derail his plans. Sapphiro can respect Ike's dedication to finding peace between the races, so she drops the subject for now and tells Ike to stay here for now and get some rest, since he is still only human after all. Once Sapphiro is gone, Ike takes a look at the arrow that was used to shoot him. According to what he has been told, he was shot from behind, meaning either someone had to infiltrated the castle to get to him, or was it betrayal from someone close to him? Just then, Ike hears a knock at the door, so he puts his skeleton mask back on just as Sadie and Lilith come in to check on him. They were both worried about Ike. They're also still arguing about which one of them gets to seduce Ike, so Lilith tells Sadie to keep her distance from Ike while she snuggles up against his arm. However, Sadie also wants to get close to Ike, so she and Lilith both get into another fight, but luckily, Jaren comes to the rescue and quickly grabs Lilith before throwing her out of the room and locking the door. Lilith begins banging on the door and asking to be let in, but Jaren knows that she is seriously annoying Ike, so he keeps her out. Ike thanks him for his help and asks him for a favor since he wants to know where Alistair currently is. Jaren promises to look into it, so after a few hours of research, Ike is informed that Alistair has been imprisoned for her failure to reclaim Avalias. This was meant to be a simple covert mission to meet with Alistair, but unfortunately, Lilith followed him here and starts warning Ike that humans can be pretty violent at times, so it's not safe to come here in person. Ike thinks he will be fine since there's something he wants to ask Alistair in person, but he also doesn't recall asking Lilith to come with him. Lilith says it'll be more interesting with the two of them together, and after they are done with the mission, they can have as much fun as they want. Besides, Sadie got to come with him on his last mission, so it's only fair that she gets to join him on this one. Ike doesn't want to argue about it, so he allows Lilith to tag along this time, but he needs her to keep up with him. They eventually get to the front gate of the prisons, and it doesn't look like it is particularly well guarded, so Lilith believes she could probably break her way in all by herself. Ike stops her and says he doesn't want to cause a fuss, so instead he wants them to get in and out as fast and as peacefully as possible. However, Lilith had already knocked out the guards by the time he had finished talking. They head inside, and the place is a lot bigger than Ike thought it would be, so it may take a while for him to find Alistair's cell. However, Lilith has a better idea and just beats up the prison warden to get him to give up his keys and tell her where Alistair is being kept. Alistair is apparently on the top floor, but as Ike and Lilith are about to head up, the rest of the guards show up due to all the screaming they heard from the warden earlier. Lilith tells Ike to go on ahead without her while she handles the guards, but before Ike leaves, he reminds her that he doesn't want any unnecessary bloodshed. Lilith promises not to kill anyone, but as Ike is leaving, he hears the guards scream in pain with several broken bones. He ignores it for now and walks up the staircase until he arrives at what should be Alistair's prison cell, but he is shocked to find it completely empty. Just then, a girl sneaks up from behind and tries to stab Ike in the back, but he manages to evade her and pin the girl to the ground. He soon realizes that the girl is actually Alistair, so he gets off her and says he wants to ask a question. He wants to know if she sent an assassin into the castle to kill him during the last battle, because if it wasn't Alistair, then that could only mean that he has a traitor in his hands. Instead of answering right away, Alistair approaches Ike and asks if he is really a demon since he doesn't seem like one to her. Ike tries to play dumb, but as the guards begin to climb the stairs to come after him, Ike gets distracted, so Alistair seizes the opportunity to put her knife to his throat and ask him once more if he is actually a human. She wants to know if Ike is really a human or not, so even as the guards begin to close in on him, she refuses to let Ike move until she gets her answer. Since she doesn't want him to move, Ike says he won't move, but that doesn't stop him from casting a spell. So before Alistair realizes what's going on, Ike says English or Spanish. Everyone is immediately frozen in place, so Ike walks up to the guards and blows them away with a wind spell. However, in the next moment, another guard sneaks up behind Ike and attempts to strike him down with his mace. Ike manages to dodge out of the way, and once he's safe, he uses gravity magic to pin the guard to the bridge grate and eventually cause him to plummet to his doom. However, before he hits the floor, Ike casts another spell to break his fall. Alistair can't understand why Ike would go through the trouble of saving a human, but the damage to the bridge extended farther than Ike had expected, and Alistair still can't move, so the grate beneath her eventually breaks apart, and she ends up falling to her doom. However, just like the last guy, Ike saves Alistair before she hits the ground. Alistair is even more confused than before since it makes no sense for a demon to save her life, but Ike ignores her and properly introduces himself this time. He says he is the commander of the 7th Army of the Demon Lord, and Alistair realizes that he must be the general that defended Avalias against Beck troops. Ike uses the fact that he is a demon commander as proof that he couldn't possibly be a human since the demon army would never be dumb enough to let a human become a high-ranking officer in their army. Alistair now believes that Ike is a demon, so Ike reiterates his question and asks Alistair if she was the one who sent an assassin, but she stubbornly refuses to tell him anything regardless. She is a proud knight of the kingdom, so she would rather die than provide any information that could be useful to the enemy. Ike realizes she isn't going to give him the answers he's looking for, so he just walks up close to Alistair and begins using mind-reading magic on her. As he is doing this, Lilith comes in to check on him, and she is furious that Ike would be flirting with a human woman when she is right here. She tries getting Ike to hug her instead, but he has already gotten all the info he needed from Alistair's head, so he says he will be leaving now. As he and Lilith are walking out, Alistair calls out and asks why Ike went through all the trouble of breaking into the prison if he was just going to leave peacefully. So Ike tells her that he no longer has a reason to stay since he knows Alistair had nothing to do with the assassination. And while he was reading her mind, he got to see a couple of her thoughts, so he tells Alistair that she shouldn't feel so bad about losing the battle for Avalia since it is important for a commander like her to learn from her mistakes and keep moving forward. After that, he tells Lilith to get ready so they can leave, but before that, she suggests that she and Ike can go somewhere private and have a little fun first. However, Ike shuts her down and immediately opens a portal to teleport them back to the castle, and after they are gone, Alistair is left with a lot of questions about what just happened. Back at the mansion, Ike is greeted by Sadie as he returns, and he tells her that he has a present for her. She is curious to see what it is, so she goes over to him and Ike pours a bag of rice into her hand. Sadie has never seen rice before, so she has no idea what it is, prompting Ike to tell her he found it in the capital city of Lazas, and that it will help raise the productivity of Avalias. He was ordered to find a way to double the tax revenue for the town, so while Avalias already produces a lot of wheat, if they switched over to rice cultivation, he will be able to increase the productivity of the entire town. Sadie doesn't know what productivity means, so Ike takes it upon himself to explain that he means they can grow a larger amount of rice than that of wheat. This also means that they won't be needing as many farmers to help with the cultivation. And that means those people will be free to do something else with their time. So overall, the productivity of Avalias will slowly rise and it will eventually become rich. Ike asks if Sadie understands everything he just said, but her brain is still trying to process the meaning of productivity, so Ike's economics lesson was totally wasted. He simplifies it and says it means the people will get to eat lots of food and you will be able to make lots of tax money in the process. Sadie finally understands Ike's point, so in order to get things rolling, he wants Sadie to try cooking something with the rice. She has never tried cooking rice before, so she asks Ike what she is meant to do with it. However, he has no idea either since he has never seen rice before. Sadie is surprised that there are things even Ike doesn't know, but she still doesn't know what she's supposed to do with the rice. All Ike knows about it is that you're supposed to go from low to high while cooking it, so he entrusts Sadie to figure out the rest while he handles some important business in town. A few minutes later, Ike calls for Jiren to assemble all the soldiers in his army in the courtyard, and once that is done, he starts thinking of what he knows so far. The arrow that was used in the assassination attempt belonged to Alistair's army, but he read her mind and she knew nothing about any assassination attempt, which could only mean one thing. Someone attacked him and tried to make it look like it was Alistair's doing, and while he doesn't like having to suspect his soldiers, he also has to face the fact that there is likely a spy, and they are among his soldiers. He proceeds to use his mind-reading magic to scan the brains of everyone that is gathered, and eventually, after going through everyone's mind, he finds a goblin who is panicking and hoping he doesn't get caught. As soon as Ike's suspicion is confirmed, he teleports right in front of the goblin and accuses him of being a spy. A while later, Ike goes over to Sapphiro's castle to ask for some advice, but he just so happens to teleport in while Sapphiro was taking a bath. She doesn't seem to mind being naked in front of Ike all that much, but Ike does mind, so he says he will wait outside. Before he steps out though, Sapphiro asks him if he has a traitor in his army. This gets Ike's attention as he hasn't told anyone about the spy goblin yet, so he asks how she knew about it. Sapphiro says she just made a guess, so Ike tells her that the traitor behind it all was Jace, the one-eyed goblin. Sapphiro isn't surprised to hear this since she had been suspicious of Jace for a while now, so as Ike asks her what he should do now, she gets up from her bath and says they are going to make Jace pay the price of betrayal. Meanwhile, back at Avalias, Jace is informed by his subordinates that Ike went to see Sapphiro recently, and he doesn't understand how Ike could have recovered so quickly after they shot him through the back. But there's even more bad news for him as another subordinate comes up to him and says they've lost contact with their spy in Ike's army. Jace knows this is bad news since it likely means Ike is onto his little scheme, so he decides that he will gather his forces and attack Ike before he gets taken out. However, to his horror, he is soon informed that Ike is out in the street looking for him. Jace goes out to meet with Ike, and he puts on a nice act, saying Ike should have let him know if he was going to stop by so suddenly. Ike says he just happened to be in the area, so he wanted to pay Jace a visit alone. However, Jace pulled up with his entire squad, so Ike asks him if he is planning on starting a war or something. Jace tells Ike that this is his territory, so Ike has no business here in the first place. He also mentions that Ike got injured a while ago, so he must really be losing his edge as a commander if he let himself get struck by an arrow so easily. Ike agrees with him and says he was indeed careless back then, but he never expected to be betrayed by someone on his team, so there was no way he could have seen it coming. Since Ike knows Jace is the traitor, Jace stops acting nice and tells Ike that he was careless to come here alone since Jace's entire army will rip him to pieces now. Ike is glad to hear that Jace brought his entire army to attack him since it means he can just blow them all up at once. Jace looks to the sky, and he sees several giant meteors raining down upon them. This is the work of Sapphiro and her devastatingly destructive spell. She enjoys using it so much that she forgot to warn Ike to get out of the blast radius, although she is sure he will be fine. Meanwhile, down on the ground, Ike is totally not fine as he is forced to hide behind a building to avoid getting blown up. He had asked Sapphiro to limit her attack power so that they could rebuild this section of the city afterwards, but she obviously ignored his request because this is way too much power. After the initial volley of explosions is over, Sapphiro begins the second phase of their plan as she orders her skeleton soldiers to begin slaying all the goblins that manage to survive. As Jace watches his men die, Ike teleports behind him and offers him a choice. He can either surrender now or he can surrender once everyone is dead. And after seeing what Ike is capable of, Jace still foolishly orders his men to kill Ike. Ike uses a wind spell to blow away the two attacking him from the front, but while he was doing that, another goblin attempts to stab him in the back, but Ike prepared a shield to protect himself, and he proceeds to take out the rest of the goblins with his magic. While all this is going on, Jace is making a run for it since he never really cared about his soldiers to begin with. However, before he can make a clean getaway, he gets cut off by one of Sapphiro's monsters, so he is forced to use a smoke bomb to distract it and sneak away into the alleyway. He slinks away into a portal and appears out in the forest, so he is certain that he successfully outsmarted Ike and Sapphiro. But as he is about to go down this secret pathway, a fireball is shot at him by Ike. Jace asks how Ike could have possibly found him since no one knows about this secret path except him, so Ike explains that he had been tracking Jace with one of his familiars this entire time. He then asks Jace to surrender immediately because there's no way Jace can win or escape. Rather than surrendering, Jace decides to attack Ike, but his punches are far too weak to get through Ike's shield spell, so Ike blows him back. Jace is then bound by magic vines and hung up so that he can escape, and this is where Jace finally admits defeat. He can see why the Demon Lord holds Ike in such high regard, and he personally thinks Ike has a lot of talent, so he has a proposal for him. He wants Ike to join forces with him so that they can take over the Demon Lord's army and get things back to how they used to be. He complains that even though demons naturally derive joy in subjugating and killing humans, she has forbidden any of them from killing humans without a good reason for it. There are many demons who don't like her way of doing things, so Jace extends an invitation to Ike to help dethrone her since she isn't fit to be a Demon Lord. Ike obviously refuses, so Jace breaks one of his hands free and throws a knife at Ike. And Ike easily dodges it, but he feels insulted that Jace really thought that would work on him. Ike begins questioning Jace on who else is plotting to overthrow the Demon Lord, but he refuses to reveal any information. Sapphiro soon shows up and she is prepared to torture Jace as much as necessary in order to get the info, but Ike pleads with her to let him try to get it peacefully since he doesn't want to hurt anyone excessively. Sapphiro complains that Ike's methods take too long, so she's going to have to take drastic measures here. Just then, Jace begins to turn purple and cry out in pain, which is surprising since Sapphiro hasn't even done anything yet, so that can only mean Jace was poisoned by the other demons in his group to keep him from spilling their secrets. Ike tries using an antidote spell, but the poison is too strong, so Jace is going to die sooner or later. Before he dies, Sapphiro asks him if he still wants to protect the identities of the people who poisoned him without a second thought, so Jace agrees to tell her who the leaders of the rebellion are so she can get revenge for him. Once they have this information, Sapphiro and Ike go to meet with Daracuden and inform her that there is a rebellion being led by the 3rd Division commander, Bastio, and since they are accusing Bastio of treason, Daracuden wants to hear what Bastio has to say for himself. Bastio claims that both Sapphiro and Ike are simply trying to frame him, which is why they killed Jace to keep him quiet. He also claims Sapphiro is plotting to steal the 3rd corpse away from him, but all these baseless accusations only serve to enrage Sapphiro. Daracuden tells Sapphiro to calm down since she's going to handle the situation, after which she tells everyone that the more power a demon possesses, the more hungry for power they become. It is that ambition that makes demons who they are, so she can't in good conscience punish a demon for ambitiously seeking power. However, with all that said, she is not stupid. She is well aware that Bastio is lying through his teeth, so she wouldn't fall for his accusations. And she is also aware that Sapphiro is still loyal to her. However, it is still Sapphiro's fault that Jace betrayed her since she's meant to maintain her troops' loyalty. Sapphiro accepts responsibility in that regard, so according to the demon's rule of law, Daracuden is meant to eliminate both of them. Yet she doesn't do that because it would be a waste to lose 2 core commanders at the same time. Instead, she decides that they will hold a duel and whoever wins will be allowed to live. A while later, Sapphiro is preparing herself for the duel, and the Demon Lord has just sent her the details of the duel, so she tells Ike that she will be fighting with puppets. As part of the rules, she is not allowed to participate in person, but neither is Bastio. They will both be put in charge of 50 puppets, and victory will be declared whenever one side is able to wipe out all of their enemies' puppets. That seems a little too complicated for a duel, since Darakutin could have easily just had them fight to the death, but Sapphiro assumes the Demon Lord wants to test their skill as commanders, but that doesn't make it any less unusual. There's one more thing Sapphiro forgot to mention. Darakutin made a provision for commanders to appoint a stand-in to fight for them, so she's choosing Ike to fight in the duel with her life on the line. Ike asks her if she's sure she doesn't want to handle this duel herself, but she says she is much more likely to win this way since the duel is a contest of skill between commanders, and she believes Ike's skill as a commander is far superior to hers. Although she is still a lot stronger than him, but for now she is entrusting her life to him. Ike doesn't like being forced to fight for Sapphiro's survival, but he's got no choice now, so he's just going to have to do his best. Ike is taken to see the puppets that he will be commanding, and according to what he has been told, these puppets all have equal amounts of strength, and they follow their commander's orders to the letter. So the only deciding factor in this duel will be the leadership abilities of the commanders. They are also allowed to equip the puppets with weapons as they see fit, but Ike doesn't think those swords will be good enough to ensure his victory. A while later, he is back in his office, trying to think of some good formations for the puppets when Sadie comes in and offers him a cup of tea. Since she's here, Ike asks Sadie what she would do if she had to win a fight, but Sadie has no idea since she wouldn't want to fight in the first place. Ike agrees that settling disputes without fighting is the best way to go, but sometimes your opponent won't be satisfied unless a fight breaks out, so hypothetically, he wants to know what she would do in that situation. Sadie doesn't have much fighting experience, but if she had to choose, then she would pick a broom as her weapon of choice. Ike says she's right since the best weapon is one that allows you to stay out of striking range of your opponent while giving you the range to strike at them. Similarly, a sword is better than a dagger, but a bow is even better since it allows you to strike from afar. But of course, Bastio would know that as well, so he would probably try to employ the same tactics. Sadie mentions how her former master used to talk about crossbows being amazing in battles, and Ike thinks that might be a good idea since they can penetrate metal armor and are easier to use than bows. However, it's not going to work for him since he needs something even more powerful than crossbows. He would like to go Oppenheimer on them, but he doesn't have the materials for that. So he goes for the next best thing: guns. Sadie has never heard of guns before, so she asks if they are strong, and Ike assures her that guns are incredibly strong. These boomsticks allow you to attack from hundreds of meters away without your opponent being able to fire back. Sadie thinks that sounds amazing, but she asks if Ike is really capable of making something like that. He may not be able to make it alone, but he already thought of a plan for that. He says Sapphiro is an amazing alchemist, so he's sure she'll be able to crank out some guns in no time. However, when he goes to ask her, Sapphiro flat out tells him that she can't do it. She may be good at making things, but she can't make something that she has never seen before. Ike tries to explain that it's just an iron cylinder with gunpowder to launch a bullet, but Sapphiro ignores him and starts asking Ike to join her for a swim. Meanwhile, Bastio has just been informed that Ike will be taking Sapphiro's place as commander, and while his underling assumes that Sapphiro must be afraid of him or something, Bastio knows that Sapphiro must have some kind of plan in mind, although he doesn't know what that is. But for now, he lets his underling know that he is really impressed with the sword that was made. The underling tells him that it was crafted using a dragon's tooth, and he can have enough made to equip all his soldiers with one, but Bastio says he will need a lot more than just 50 swords for what he has planned. Meanwhile, Ike has just gotten out of the pool with Sapphiro, and he can't believe how relaxed she is when failure on his part would mean her death. Just then, someone sends Ike's coat floating over to him, so he thanks the person. However, a moment later, he is shocked to find out that the person was Darakutin. This is really bad for Ike since he is not wearing his mask, but he thinks he can bluff his way out of trouble since Darakutin may not recognize him. She drops a bag on the ground and tells Ike to open it, so Ike does so and is astonished when he sees a bunch of boomsticks. She knew Ike was trying to get his hands on some, so she went through the trouble of getting it for him. Ike tries to deny it since he doesn't want her to know who he really is, but Darakutin tells him that there's no point in lying about it since she already knew he was human. Romberg had told her all about Ike, so she knew from the very beginning that Ike was human. But if she knew from the start, then Ike asks why she didn't eliminate him immediately. She says she let him live for the sake of her wish, since no matter how much power she possesses, she won't be able to achieve her goal without having people by her side to fight for her. Ike asks her what her wish is, so the Demon Lord explains that she wants to build the peaceful world she desires, and to do that, she needs as many skilled people as possible, so she wants Ike to help her achieve her goal. Ike says he is happy to serve her and Daracuten is pleased, so she teleports away. After that, Ike takes the guns to Sapphiro so she can see what they look like, and she finally understands what guns are, so she asks Ike how she is meant to make bullets. Ike says it's a metal ball, so Sapphiro conjures one up. However, it's way too big to be used as a bullet. Ike tells her it needs to be small enough to fit inside the gun barrel, so Sapphiro understands what she needs to do, although she doesn't like it because making small things gives her terrible acne. Just then, a huge explosion occurs, but Sapphiro didn't sense any magic, so Ike explains that it was probably caused by the gunpowder in development. Fiorentina comes out and tells Ike that she has made the powder he asked for, so Ike asks Sapphiro if she's done with the bullets, and the ones she made this time are perfect, so he wants her to make around 500 more of them. Sapphiro agrees to get him the bullets, although she offloads all the work onto Fiorentina since she doesn't want to do it. Ike apologizes to Fiorentina since he's going to need her to make the gunpowder and bullets since Sapphiro doesn't want to help, but she says she's already used to it because Sapphiro never wants to do her job. On the day of the duel, the stadium is full of demons eagerly waiting to see some action, and Bastio begins mocking Ike for only outfitting his puppets with shields when his puppets are completely decked out in armor. He asks Ike what Sapphiro is doing right now and whether she's plotting something, but in any case, it doesn't matter to him since he will be winning no matter what. His puppets are covered head to toe in Damascus steel, meaning no sword or arrow attacks will be able to penetrate them. It was a gift to him from Daracuten, so he believes she must be taking side in this duel. Ike does know what Daracuten was thinking to give both of them equipment like this. Maybe she wanted it to be an equal fight, or maybe it's some kind of test, but regardless of what her intentions were, he can always ask her after he has won. The match officially begins and the rules are announced once more. Each commander has 50 puppets, and whoever is able to destroy all the enemy puppets first will be declared the winner, while the loser will die. With that out of the way, the signal is given for the duel to begin, and Bastio immediately orders his archer puppets to fire at Ike's puppets. Ike orders his puppets to block with their shields, and while some of the arrows are blocked, a few of Ike's puppets end up getting shot anyway. After this, Bastio orders his other puppets to begin their assault, so they run forward and begin laying waste to Ike's troops, while Bastio is laughing the whole time because Ike is doing nothing but defending. After a while, a large number of Ike's puppets have been killed, but Daracuten knows it's not over yet, and in the next moment, a loud boom echoes through the arena as Ike's remaining puppets begin firing their guns. And now that Ike has begun his counterattack, it's not long before his puppets begin mowing down Bastio's puppets with ease, and Bastio has no idea what's going on or why he is losing. Before long, all of Bastio's puppets fall to the ground dead, and Bastio has officially lost the battle, so the Demon Lord comes down from her seat to deliver the bad news to him. She has prepared two choices for him since she is so nice, so she tells Bastio that he can either end himself or she will do it for him, and she won't make it painless. However, Bastio says he has something else in mind in case he ended up losing, so in the next moment, Bastio has an archer shoot an arrow at Daracuten's back. However, unlike Ike, she was able to see it coming and caught the arrow before it hit her, but something she didn't see coming was the fact that there was a high-power explosive attached to the arrow, and as a result, she gets blown up. Bastio then sets off another series of explosions in the stands, killing a bunch of spectators and allowing his undead soldiers to enter the arena, and he now declares that he will be the new Demon Lord from now on. Bastio's skeletons begin attacking all the ogres in the stadium, and the ogres must have forgotten how to fight because they are just running around and letting themselves get slaughtered one by one. Bastio laughs and orders his troops to kill all who try to resist, for he is the new ruler of this kingdom. In the middle of his angry speech, Bastio turns to Ike and tells him that inevitably the demon army will fall in line and respect him as the new demon lord, so he offers Ike the chance to join his side without a fight since he acknowledges Ike's abilities. He even offers to let Ike have full command over the 7th Corps as a bonus, and Ike tells Bastio that his offer is certainly appealing, but it's not something Bastio is in a position to promise since he will never be able to become Demon Lord. Bastio laughs in Ike's face for being foolish enough to decline such an offer while he is surrounded by an entire army ready to attack at any moment. But even as he is surrounded by Bastio's army and has a couple skeletons coming after him, Ike remains calm and casts a massive wind spell to take out the skeletons attacking from the front. Bastio orders his remaining soldiers to eliminate Ike, but as they charge at him, Ike prepares a series of dark spears which he uses to impale them all as they approach. Since they can't get close, one skeleton decides to go all in and ignite its head to be used as a weapon. But it went through all the trouble of sacrificing its head and still misses the shot entirely. And a couple seconds later, it gets absolutely vaporized by Ike's magic. Even though his firepower is sufficient to hold the army back, Ike still doesn't want to get completely surrounded, so he uses magic to fly into the air and escape while hundreds of arrows are shot at him. And once he has finally gotten to a good position, he begins casting a huge attack spell, which takes out a large portion of Bastio's army in an instant. After that, Ike begins flying straight at Bastio, and upon getting close enough, he grabs Bastio's face and sets off a point-blank explosion in an attempt to finish him off for good. By the time the dust settles, Ike is the only one left standing, so he assumes he has won, although a lot of demons did end up dying at the hands of Bastio. However, it looks like it's not over yet as Ike sees Bastio's head rolls in front of him, and at the same time, Bastio's body sneaks up from behind to attack. Several explosions occur which shake the stadium's foundation, but Ike managed to avoid it by jumping back to create some separation between Bastio and himself. But despite all this hard work, Bastio tells him that it's all pointless since there's no way he can win. As the leader of the Undying Brigade, Ike must know better than anyone that soldiers like these are almost impossible to kill permanently, so all the soldiers that Ike had previously slain are going to slowly recover and continue fighting. Bastio, as well as his subordinates, are all undead, meaning nothing Ike does will be enough to earn him a victory, since they'll just keep coming back. The undead soldiers begin attacking Ike again with their exploding skull strike, but they still have terrible aim with it. But even if they didn't manage to hit him, it still got Ike's attention, so while he was distracted, this soldier sneaks up on him and tries to take Ike out, but Ike sees it coming and freezes the soldier's arm solid before shattering it to pieces. After that, Ike uses time magic to slow down the rest of the advancing soldiers, and while they are all frozen in place, he proceeds to knock each and every one of them out with his staff. However, even the power of Zoworld isn't enough to stop Bastio's army as they just keep getting back up. His army is basically infinite with their constant regeneration, and no matter how much power Ike possesses, he still has a finite amount of magic, so eventually he will run out of steam and succumb to the relentless attacks of the undead army. He says it's a shame that Ike has to die this way, since if he had agreed to work under him, then Bastio could have put his talents to good use. Just then, the archer who has been in sniping position this entire time takes aim and shoots an explosive arrow straight at Ike's back. However, Ike is more aware of his surroundings after the last backshot he receives, so even as the arrow strikes and creates a massive explosion, Ike managed to block it with a magic shield, although it left his shield cracked and Ike exhausted. Bastio is surprised that Ike is still alive after taking such a hit, but it makes sense since he was skilled enough to become the commander of the 7th Brigade. However, regardless of how much Ike struggles to keep going, it won't save him in this situation, so he will eventually be killed at Bastio's hands. Ike realizes Bastio is right and all the attack spells he has cast up to this point have wasted a lot of his magic, so he needs to come up with a new plan soon, otherwise he doesn't stand a chance. He knows the undead are walking corpses, so darkness magic won't work on them. But as he thinks about it, he thinks of a plan of attack that is guaranteed to work against corpses. So as the undead soldiers run in to continue their attack, Ike casts holy magic and exorcises them all. Bastio is shocked that Ike was actually able to destroy his soldiers, but he still has another way of attacking Ike, so he gives the signal for the sniper to take another shot. However, before the sniper can fire, his arm is chopped off by Sapphiro. She apologizes for keeping Ike waiting so long, but she's finally here and she brought back up. On the ground, the rest of the 7th Corps are all engaged in combat with the undead army, and they are making short work of them. Meanwhile, inside, Sapphiro flies down to Ike to inform him that the others are taking care of the undead soldiers outside, and as soon as Bastio notices Sapphiro, he starts getting ready to attack her. But before he does, he hears a voice from behind him saying Ike is his opponent, so he should ignore Sapphiro. Bastio turns around, and to his horror, he sees Daracubin looking down at him. She has every right to obliterate him this instant, and she probably should, but she tells Bastio that she will give him one last chance to survive as long as he manages to win a duel to the death with Ike. Keep in mind, this is the second chance she's given Bastio despite knowing he was a traitor from the beginning, but since she's the boss, Ike has no choice but to step up and fight Bastio alone. The two charge at each other, and as Bastio attacks with his sword, Ike blocks it with his shield magic, but Bastio feels insulted that Ike actually believes he can win, so he goes all out with his sword and strikes Ike's shield again, this time causing a crack to form in Ike's defenses. Bastio tells Ike that he is a weakling compared to him, so there was no doubt in his mind that Ike will lose this duel. He continues attacking while telling Ike his time is up, and even when Ike tries to jump back to create some distance, Bastio doesn't give him any time to rest as he uses his head to fire a dark laser at Ike, but as Ike notices this, he fires back at Bastio with a spell of his own, one which uses white magic. The white magic overwhelms Bastio, and after making contact with him, it causes Bastio's arm to decay. Sapphira had no idea Ike could use white magic, and she is left wondering where and when Ike could have learnt it. But after seeing the Demon Lord's nonchalant face, it is clear that Daracuten already knew Ike possessed such magic. Bastia refuses to give up and charges at Ike once again. But the entire time, Ike is just having a flashback to a time in his youth when he was still studying magic under Romberg. At the time, he seemed oddly interested in a flower that had wilted away, but since it was time for his daily magic lessons, he left it alone for the time being and went instead with Romberg to study. Ike learned a lot of interesting spells, but by the time they were done, he was curious to know where there was magic that could bring a wilted flower back to life. And Romberg immediately answers that white magic would be able to do it, so Ike asked to learn that next. However, Romberg reminds Ike that he is supposed to be pretending to be a demon, and white magic is almost impossible for demons to learn. This is because it draws power from a compassionate heart, and demons are born to be haters, so they naturally lack an affinity for it. With that said, Ike is human, so he should be able to learn it, but Romberg wants to make it clear that white magic is the most terrifying weapon that can be wielded against a demon, so even if Ike wants to learn it, he has to be careful about how he uses it. Ike agreed to be careful, so Romberg taught it to him. And back to the present, Ike tells Bastio that his ambition to become Demon Lord is too much for someone like him. He has no problem sacrificing his men, and he was willing to backstab his master just to attain power. So while that may be how a demon would normally act, Ike won't stand for such atrocities. Demon or not, a ruler oppressing their subjects is wrong. Bastio tells Ike to shut up since he doesn't know what he is talking about, but Ike tells him to be quiet instead because these are going to be his final moments of life. Bastio tries to attack him again, so Ike charges up his white magic, and with one swift motion he slashes Bastio's stomach and kills him for good. With Bastio finally defeated, Sapphira walks up to Ike and says she's glad everything ended up working out in the end. Ike realizes that Sapphira must have known Bastio was planning something, which is why she asked Ike to handle the duel while she prepared backup for the inevitable coup attempt. Sapphira doesn't see a problem since everyone survived in the end, give or take a couple hundred civilian demons, but they weren't important anyway. However, Daracuten approaches them and says there is still a huge problem left to be resolved, since now that Bastio is dead, the Third Corps no longer has a leader, so she's giving Ike the job, and before he has the chance to say anything, she teleports away. After that, everyone on Ike's team comes over to congratulate him on his victory, but Sapphira seems upset about something. A little while later, Sapphira goes to see Daracuten at her castle, and she angrily says that Ike serves under her, so she should be the one to decide where he goes. Daracuten is surprised that Sapphira is so upset about this since she thought she would be happy for Ike to get a promotion. But in any case, Sapphira serves under Daracuten, so she has the right to give Ike whatever position she wants. Although she thinks it would be best to hear what he has to say for himself since he is here anyway. Sapphira notices Ike walking up from behind her, and since he came here, Daracuten assumes he must have decided if he wants to accept the promotion or not. Ike starts by saying the people in his town are finally getting used to their new lives. At first, his men didn't like living with humans, but over time they've learned to adapt to the new lifestyle, and so have the humans. They live in relative peace and help each other without prejudice, and that is a huge step towards Ike's ultimate goal. He explains that when he joined the demon army, he hoped to create a world where demons and humans can peacefully coexist with one another, and his goal hasn't changed. He removes his mask as a sign of sincerity and apologizes to Daracuten since he is going to have to reject the promotion. He still has a lot he wants to learn from Sapphira, but he promises that he will make Avalias the first city where humans and demons coexist. Once Ike is back in Avalias, he takes a moment to overlook everything he has. Sadie comes looking for him and asks Ike if there's something bothering him since he has barely spent any time inside since the duel ended, but Ike informs her that he just wanted to check the quality of the soil. He has been thinking of changing their farming system so they can grow crops all year, and Sadie is excited since that would mean she can have turnips whenever she wants. But while Ike has been thinking of planting crops, the human army has been gradually cutting down the demon army's forces as they advance in the war. Ike remains oblivious to this, so he carries on with his farming plan and uses his magic to make it rain on the fields. Sadie asks Ike what he intends to do, so Ike begins explaining that currently, with the way they utilize the farmland of Avalias, they grow wheat, which they use to make their food. After that, they leave the land to rest and subsequently plant grass in order to feed their livestock. However, this means they have to leave the land unused for a large chunk of the year, so Ike has thought of a better way to do things. From now on, they will rotate crops between wheat, clovers, barley, and turnips. The rotation of crops will allow the soil to maintain its fertility without a rest period, and that means no human, nor demon in Avalias will ever have to go hungry again. Following that, Ike heads back to his office where Sade brings him some tea to relax. She also wants to congratulate Ike since she had heard that Sapphira promoted him to the position of vice commander since a certain goblin vice commander got himself killed. Just then, Jiren comes running into the room because he has terrible news to report. It's about the Alliance of Kings, and they've been slowly encroaching on the demon army's territory. In fact, they've already completely wiped out the second corps on their way here, and that's an incredible feat of power because the second corps is made up entirely of skilled combatants. So for them to be wiped out so thoroughly means that the Alliance is a force to be reckoned with. Ike is a bit surprised that the Alliance of Kings is already having such a pronounced effect on the war, but Sadie doesn't know what the Alliance of Kings is in the first place, so Ike explains to her that it is one of the ancient human treaties which states that when the strength of the Demon Lord's army becomes top grade for one nation to handle alone, the humans will put their differences aside and collectively decide to jump the demon army. Since it's an ancient treaty, Jiren asks if it has happened before, and from what Ike knows, the treaty has been used 3 times in the past, and each time it was used, it led to the defeat of the Demon Lord's army at the time. That's a concerning statistic, so Jiren asks Ike if they are going to be okay, but Ike tells him, "No, we're pretty much cooked." With the way the Alliance has been advancing recently, Avelius is bound to be our next target. Not long ago, Ike helped capture Arsenam, which is a very strategic fort city, so the Alliance's goal is most likely trying to reclaim it, and to do that, they'll first have to strike at the front lines here in Avelius. Demons are generally stronger than humans in one-on-one fights, but they'll struggle against large groups of humans in coordinated attacks. If Avelius ends up falling to the Alliance, then they will surely move on to capture Arsenam, and with their numbers, it is highly likely that Arsenam would be lost as well. From there, the demon army would be forced to retreat back to the Demon Lord's castle, and they would be in a very dire situation at that point. Ike doesn't want to let that happen since it would ruin his dream of allowing humans and demons to coexist would be ruined, so he comes up with a plan to overcome the Alliance's overwhelming numbers. And it's going to involve a lot of guns. Unfortunately, they do not have a lot of guns, and their attempts to make more guns haven't worked out as well as they had thought. They tried using alchemy to recreate the gun, and on the surface it looks like a success. But when actually used, the quality of the guns was so much worse than what they had expected, as the gun copies would all break after firing just one bullet. Alchemy has its limits, and the level of precision needed to make a gun is far greater than anything an alchemist could accomplish, as these replicas are far too fragile and lack the power of the real thing. Sapphira asks if it is really necessary to use guns in the first place because she is pretty sure she can just use some meteor strikes to flatten the Alliance. However, Ike is firmly against the idea since he is trying to defend Avelius, not turn it into a pile of ash. In order to fight the Alliance with minimal collateral damage, they need to have weapons that anyone can use, but the only other option left in order to mass produce the guns is by making all the metal parts individually and assembling them by hand. It's certainly possible, but none of them are skilled enough to do something like that. It might be possible if they could convince some dwarves to do the work, but the dwarves already lost their war with the humans, so they've all scattered into the forest. This is going to make it really hard to get them to help with the guns, especially since they need a lot of dwarves to get all the parts made. Bringing them together is going to be rather difficult, but Ike has a plan for that, and it involves rescuing the dwarf king who was imprisoned by the humans. Years ago, the humans attacked a dwarven village and laid siege to it, all in an attempt to force the dwarves to build weapons for them. With the entire village burning to the ground, the human general is annoyed that the dwarf king didn't do what they told him to earlier, so now they had to send a message. And do you know how much hard work it is to burn down a village? The dwarf king still refused to give in to the humans' requests since he didn't want humans using his technology to fight wars. But since the dwarf king still wasn't agreeing to do what they said, the human general had to send another message and threw his sword dangerously close to the dwarf king's balls. However, before they took his balls, the general threatened to take the life of his son if he didn't cooperate, and the dwarf king is willing to lose a lot of things, but his son was more precious to him than anything else, so he relented and agreed to have his people work for the kingdom of Ismuth. After that, he was locked up in the kingdom's prison, and he has no idea what his son or his people must be going through right now. Just then, he hears a commotion outside his cell, so he gets up to see what it is, and to his surprise, he finds all the guards knocked out on the ground. Lilith then pops up in front of him, and she's glad she finally found the right cell, so she unlocks the door and tells the Dwarf King to follow her. The Dwarf King doesn't understand why a demon would want to save him, but Lilith isn't in the mood to answer any questions, so she uses her magic to knock the Dwarf King out cold. Jiren yells at her for doing that since they are meant to be rescuing him, and she doesn't care and leaves Jiren to carry the Dwarf King out by himself. As they make their way into the halls, Jiren checks to make sure there are no guards nearby, but Lilith says she's getting bored with all the sneaking around. She wants to experience a little action, but Jiren reminds her that I told them to make sure they aren't spotted taking the Dwarf King, and to avoid fights if possible. But in response to Jairon's sound arguments, Lilith just looks him in the eye and calls him ugly. All their bickering drew the attention of some guards, so Lilith takes the opportunity to knock them out for fun. Jairon scolds her for going against Ike's wishes and getting into a fight, but right after, a single guard comes charging at Jairon. So Jairon punches him straight into a coma, and Lilith starts making fun of him for getting into a fight as well. They both leave the dungeon, but for some reason, there are dozens of soldiers just sitting outside the door, so Lilith and Jairon immediately get spotted and now have to face the soldiers. Jairon asks Lilith to handle this, so she flies up in the air and begins using her powers to suck all the soldiers dry, but just enough to knock them out since Ike doesn't like needless killing. Ike was nearby the whole time to monitor how the two would handle the mission, and he is pretty disappointed that they are drawing so much unwanted attention. Jairon doesn't understand why there are so many soldiers left in Ismuth when the Alliance should have enlisted most of them, and they can't knock any more out either since Lilith is already full. As they are running, pillars of rock emerge from behind them to cut off the guards, and Ike then comes out to tell the two that they did a good job, even if they nearly screwed up the mission. Jairon reports that they successfully acquired the Dwarf King, but Ike reminds him that the person he is holding is a king, so he should be handled with more respect. A couple hours later, the Dwarf King wakes up in Ike's castle, and he still wants to know why the demons chose to rescue him, but Ike doesn't answer immediately and instead shows the Dwarf King a gun, asking if he would be able to recreate it. The Dwarf King has never seen something like this before, and he acknowledges that the gun is rather complicated, but he believes he could recreate it in a couple of hours if he tried. However, he has no reason to try since he refuses to build weapons for war. They are just using him just like the humans did, so he says they can do whatever they want with him, but he won't help them cause death and destruction. Ike understands why the Dwarf King would feel this way, but Ike assures him that his intentions are in no way sinister. He wants the guns in order to further his ultimate goal of peace between humans and demons, and to prove it, he asks the Dwarf King to accompany him outside. They leave Ike's castle, and the Dwarf King is shocked to see the busy streets full of both humans and demons, and not a single fight in sight. Ike once again states that the only thing he wants is to establish peace between humans and demons, which is why he needs the Dwarf King's help. The Dwarf King finds what Ike is doing to be rather interesting, but he still refuses to help because humans used his people and destroyed his nation, so he has no interest in doing something that would bring peace to humanity. If that's the case, then Ike offers to help the Dwarf King rebuild his fallen kingdom if he helps. The Dwarf King takes offense to the idea and tells Ike that rebuilding a nation isn't as easy as he thinks it is. He lost his family when his nation was ruined by the humans, so how could Ike ever claim to be able to help him rebuild? Ike understands the Dwarf King's skepticism, but he has one more thing he wants to show the Dwarf King, so he leads him to a workshop, and the Dwarf King has a look of disbelief plastered across his face. The workshop is full of the dwarves whom he had lost contact with, even his son, and they are all overjoyed to have their king Gunther back. They tell Gunther that they were all suddenly abducted by demons, so at first they thought they were being sacrificed for something. But the demons gave them food and a place to stay, and Ike even promised them that he would rescue Gunther, which earned him their support. After seeing how well Ike has been treating his people, Gunther believes he can trust Ike, so he agrees to offer his full support in helping Ike achieve his goal of peace. After the deal was finalized, Ike returns to his office as Sadie is busy cleaning up. He takes off his mask, and Sadie offers to make him some tea, but Ike thinks she has been working a little too hard lately, so he says she can take a break and relax. Sadie appreciates the offer, but she tells Ike that she prefers to having something to do. But if that's the case, then Ike says she can read some of his books if she wants. Once again, Sadie appreciates the offer, but she never learned how to read, so she wouldn't be able to get much use out of the books. Since she never learned how, Ike offers to spend some time teaching her the next chance he gets, and Sadie is really happy to hear that. Just then, Lilith barges into the room to let Ike know that the remaining dwarves have been found, so Ike quickly puts his mask back on and tells her she did a good job. However, Lilith isn't happy since she can clearly tell that Ike and Sadie were having a moment and she's jealous. Sadie and Lilith start arguing over Ike again, and this is when Jairon comes running in with more terrible news. Meanwhile, the general of Ismuth has just received the news that the Dwarf King was taken from their prison by the demons, but he's not too worried since he doesn't think one old dwarf can make much of a difference in the outcome of the war. He then receives a report from his scout that Avalias has around 500 soldiers at the moment, and this news gives the general a great deal of confidence since he greatly outnumbers their forces, so he orders his army of 12,000 to get ready to move out. A while later, we see Ike and a dwarf at the top of a cliff, while Jairon is struggling to make his way to the top. Ike could easily help him by using levitation magic, but he chooses not to because Jairon could really use the exercise. Once Jairon finally makes it all to the top of the cliff, He is exhausted and asks how much farther they have to go, but luckily, it looks like they've already arrived at their destination. The dwarf tells him not to worry because their goal is really close by. In fact, he can already see it. So he leads Ike and Jiren to a cave full of natural nitre, which is perfect for making gunpowder. Back in town, the dwarves are all hard at work creating the guns needed for Ike's army, and they've already made quite a few. To test these out, Jiren calls some goblins over and instructs them to fire at the targets, and as they do, the wooden planks become riddled with holes. Jiren is pleased with this result, so he orders the goblins to continue practicing with the guns. Meanwhile, the troops are all assembling within the town, and the troops' leaders are in a meeting with Ike and Sapphiro to discuss their plans for the war. The ogre asks Ike how he managed to get the city wall rebuilt so quickly, which should have taken at least twice as long as it did. Ike explains that he had humans work alongside demons to speed up the rebuilding process, and he even paid the humans a decent wage for it since that would make them more motivated than they would have been if they had been forced to work. Just then, the gargoyle leader comes crashing through the roof, and he complains about the room being so small that he couldn't use the door, but it can't be helped since it was built for humans, not 10-foot demons. It's been a while since he has seen Ike, so he greets him under his new title of Vice Commander, although Ike doesn't think it's necessary to go through all the formalities. Since everyone is here, Sapphiro gets the meeting started and tells everyone that from now on, she's giving Ike full authority over all war proceedings, so all the troop leaders are now obligated to obey his every command since he is their direct superior. None of them have any complaints about this order since they all have a great deal of respect for Ike after what he did to Bastio during the duel. They all tell Ike that they will do whatever he says, but that aside, they really need to start thinking of a strategy since they only have 2,000 soldiers, while the enemy has around 12,000. The wolf captain tells everyone that the troops should easily be able to win a 6-to-1 battle, but Ike reminds him that even if he believes his wolf army could handle it, there are still a lot of demons in the army who wouldn't be able to. In that case, the ogre suggests that they perform a night raid and attack the enemy by surprise. However, Ike rejects this idea as well as since he knows for a fact that the enemy army has mages among their ranks, so if they attempt a night raid, a symbol detection spell could ruin everything. Instead, he wants to battle them on his own terms, which is why he states that he will allow the human army to attack them here. The army must have a great deal of confidence due to their large size, so Ike intends to strip them of that confidence and watch them crumble. That way he can end the battle as soon as possible and with very few casualties too. After the meeting has concluded, Sadie is busy cleaning up the mess from the hole in the roof and Jiren is helping as well. At the same time, Ike is looking over a map and Sadie remarks to him that the city has become so lively recently. His surprise, she is so calm despite the fact that they will be going to war in a few hours. But Sadie tells him she isn't scared because she knows all the people here are going to do their best to defend Avalius. And while she isn't able to join the fight, she can still help out by preparing the food for the soldiers. Although she still has a few concerns regarding what to do for meal preps, since she needs to make a lot of food for the large group of soldiers, but the only thing she knows how to cook at such a large scale is soup. She asks if Ike has any suggestions for her, so Ike gets up and starts looking through his collection of books, but Sadie tells him he doesn't have to go that far just to give her an answer. Ike tells her that this is important since what soldiers eat can directly affect their morale, so he has to do his best to make sure his men get to eat the best meals possible. He's just glad there isn't a good shortage right now since it would have been catastrophic for the army's strength. As he is looking through an old recipe book, Ike asks Sadie if they have rice, and after she confirms it, he suggests that she could try making something called fried rice. After learning the recipe, Sadie immediately heads into the kitchen to get cooking. Despite only hearing about the recipe a few minutes ago, her cooking skills are good enough to earn Uncle Roger's approval. Once she is done, she serves Ike some of the rice, and they are both happy with how it turned out. Fried rice doesn't take a little time to make and can be made in large quantities, but it still tastes great, so be sure to help boost the morale of the soldiers once they get a taste of this. For now, they prepare to eat their fried rice together, but before they can take the first bite, they get interrupted by Jiren, who is jealous that they are eating such delicious food without inviting him to join. Ike asks if Jiren would like a plate of rice as well, and he excitedly agrees, so Sadie gets him a plate as well. However, before they can start eating, they are once again interrupted as Lilith comes in, and she is jealous that the others are eating a meal with Ike without her, so she wants to join in as well. Both she and Jiren are amazed by the wonderful flavor of the rice, especially Lilith, who eagerly asks Sadie for a second helping, but Sadie piles the food a little too high, so Lilith accuses Sadie of trying to make her fat. They begin staring each other down, and Ike just wishes they would share the meal without getting into a fight with one another for once. After that, Ike takes count of everything he has done in preparation for the Alliance's invasion. He has repaired the city walls, town's walls entirely. He has gathered a large army to fight, and he has equipped them all with guns to ensure their victory. So the next step of his plan is to employ his strategy. At the same time, an ogre that was put in charge of being the lookout notices the Alliance's army approaching, so he sounds the alarm and tells everyone that it's time to get ready for war. Jiren comes running over to inform Ike that it is time for the army to begin the attack, so Ike heads out and stands before the Alliance with his troops. He tells them that if the Alliance manages to make it past them here, they will go on to attack Arsenum, and that would be devastating for the demon army, so he says they must protect Avalias at all costs. Everyone is on board and begins cheering, but at the same time, the commander of the human army says he is disappointed because the demons are a lot fewer in number than he had imagined they would be. He went through all the trouble of hiring the best soldiers across the country, but it looks like he was worried for nothing in the end, and he worries that his army might be a little overkill in fact. He doesn't think of this as a war anymore and decides that it is more of an extermination, so he orders his men to charge and make sure every single filth monster dies. But as the human army advances and begins using their heavy artillery, I cast a barrier to defend the castle from all the incoming projectiles. However, the human commander isn't fettered and orders his troops to fire another barrage. They keep doing this in hopes of overwhelming Ike's barrier, but Ike shows no signs of fatigue, so his soldiers begin cheering once more. Ike had expected them to begin the attack like this, but he's currently trying to anticipate what their next move will be. The human commander sees that the barrier is blocking all their attacks, but he seems to have a plan in mind, so he orders his soldiers to fire yet another barrage. Lilith and Jiren mock the human army for repeatedly firing at Ike's barrier even though it is pointless, but this time it looks like the humans accounted for Ike's barrier since they brought out their magicians and had them all disrupted. This makes Ike's barrier unstable and allows the projectiles to land on their target. And with the barrier down now, the human commander orders his first squad of soldiers to begin their attack. However, as the soldiers charge towards the walls, they are stopped in their tracks as they see a titan emerge from behind the walls, and it starts chucking rocks at them too. The soldiers see some of their comrades get splattered by the rocks, and Erwin isn't here to motivate them. So they are starting to think of running away, but as Ike's other soldiers begin to fire arrows at them, they all use their shields to defend themselves and realize they can shoot the giant as well. So before it can throw another rock at them, they shoot it in the chest several times and topple it over. They continue firing arrows at the people on the wall, so Jiren and the others are forced to run for cover. Ike puts up another barrier to stop the arrows, but the soldiers have already gotten too close, so they begin hooking ladders onto the walls and climbing up. Obviously, Ike's soldiers aren't going to just let them climb up, so they start firing arrows and throwing rocks in an attempt to hold the humans back. However, the humans have the numbers advantage, so if they keep climbing, eventually at least one will make it all the way to the top. But it's not going to be any of these guys. As the battle rages on, the vice commander of the humans comments that the demons are a lot more resilient than he had thought they would be. But if they keep attacking like this, then sooner or later, they should be able to overwhelm the demons. However, while watching his men die in battle, the only thing the commander can think about is what he's going to eat for dinner tonight. He wants to get things over with as soon as possible so he can relax, so he decides that he's going to fire another catapult at the wall, even though a lot of his men are in the direct line of fire. The vice commander tries to mention that doing something like that would put the lives of his men in danger, but the commander didn't stutter, and he still doesn't give a shit, so he orders the catapults to be fired. Ike sees the projectiles coming, so he tries putting up a barrier, but it gets disrupted once again. So he tells everyone to brace for impact. Everyone runs for cover as the barrage hits the walls head-on, and the collision both deals a lot of damage to the structure of the wall and causes a lot of casualties to those in it, both on the side of the demons and that of the humans. Jiren managed to make it out alive, and Lilith is absolutely disgusted that the human commander would be willing to kill his own men just so he could breach the wall, and Ike is both saddened and angered by the human commander's total disregard for human life. The commander smiles arrogantly, showing that he's enjoying himself. And without a second thought, or an ounce of self-reflection, he commands the second squad of soldiers to attack through the hole in the wall. Ike's soldiers come out to intercept the soldiers, but the battle is stacked against them greatly at this point. The human army is making steady progress towards ultimately infiltrating the city walls. All the while, the human commander is sipping a cup of tea and asking why they haven't ended this fight already. So to speed things along, he orders his vice commander to send in the third unit of soldiers. The battle is progressing much faster than Ike had initially anticipated, but he still believes his plan should hold up against the endless assault of the humans. With the hole in the wall, Lilith is doing her best to hold back the humans so they don't make it inside. She can push them back for now, but there are too many humans, so she doesn't know how much longer she can keep this up for. Jiren and the other trained demons would like to provide support with the guns, but because the humans are so close to their allies, they might end up hitting their friends if they shoot now. They are stuck since there's nothing they can do to help safely. But that's where the werewolf general comes in, as he and his team all charge in and begin obliterating the humans one by one. With his help, they stand a much better chance of keeping the humans at bay. The humans don't give up, and instead yell for all their fellow soldiers to only attack in groups of 3, that way can overpower the demons. However, before the humans could use the power of friendship, the demons began using the power of guns, since they now have a clear shot. The humans try using their shields to defend themselves, but the bullets punch holes right through them. And that was just the first round of shots too, as Jiren orders the second set of gun-wielding demons to begin firing. After seeing the amount of devastation the guns can cause, the rest of the humans start to fear for their lives, so they all begin to retreat. However, in the middle of their escape, the wolf general catches one human and is about to slash his face off, but just before he does, a horn is blown, signaling for all the demons to stop fighting. The wolf general is disappointed, but rules are rules, so he stops fighting and gets off the humans so he can return to the city. Fiorentina is standing atop the walls, watching the humans as they retreat, and she thinks back to the strategy meeting Ike has earlier. He said he wanted to finish the war quickly, and with as few casualties as possible, and the generals agreed with him, but something like that is easier said than done, so they ask Ike how he intends to pull it off. Ike says he wants them all to fight with their full strength for as long as they can. He asks the wolf general how long he can last if he is fighting at full strength, and Bio says he can keep fighting for about an hour, but his soldiers can't last as long as him, so Ike just assumes a time limit of 10 minutes. He tells him that he wants Bio and his soldiers to fight at full capacity for 10 minutes, and then afterwards, they should withdraw from the battlefield no matter what. That part of the plan has already been completed, so moments later, the ogres come running out of the castle gates in a rage-filled frenzy, and they are taking great pleasure in squeezing the life out of the puny human soldiers. As the humans see the brutality of the ogres, even more of them start to fear for their lives and make a hasty retreat. During the strategy meeting, Bio initially felt insulted when Ike told him that he would have to retreat in battle, so he accuses Ike of not trusting him. However, it's not that Ike doesn't trust him, he just had a plan in mind. Behemoth understood the plan a lot quicker, so he explains to Bio that Ike wants them to attack in shifts. The longer they fight on the battlefield, the more fatigue they will suffer. So if they attack in shifts, not only will they be able to confuse and wear down the enemy, but they will also be able to keep themselves in top condition. Behemoth really likes Ike's plan, but fighting in shifts alone won't be enough to overcome the large numbers that the human armies possess, which is why there's another phase to Ike's plan. He intends to use Jiren's marksman and Fiorentina's alchemy to lure the humans into a position where they have no choice but to attack one spot, so he asks Fiorentina if she is up to the task. Fiorentina says she will carry out his orders even if she has to sacrifice her life to do it, but Ike asks that she doesn't do that. He doesn't want anyone intentionally sacrificing their life for any reason. He reminds them all that the whole point of the plan is to minimize casualties among their soldiers, so there's no reason for anyone to let themselves die. On the end of the humans, they have just reloaded their catapult and are about to launch a devastating volley of rocks, but before they can fire, they get hit with a different devastating volley of rocks from above. This is the work of the aerial unit of the demon army, and they mock the humans for building such fragile weapons as they do it. This was also a part of Ike's brilliant strategy, as he told the aerial unit that their job was to fly high above the battlefield and lay waste to the humans' siege machines. Ike has also gone through the liberty of scouting out the enemy forces, and from what he has gathered, he knows that the human army is over 12,000 in number, and that their leader is a man of noble origin who is a total coward and prioritizes his own safety and well-being over everything else. Fiorentina was starting to understand where Ike was going with this, so Ike elaborates by stating that if their efforts cause a change to the tide of the battle, then their enemy general is sure to react, and due to his cowardly nature, his reaction will almost certainly be to run away. From there, all they need to do is find and capture him, but Bio isn't sure things will actually work out so conveniently. Why do they even need to capture him in the first place when it would be much easier to kill him on the spot? But Ike says he has a plan for the enemy commander, so Bio doesn't need to worry about it. He just wants all the generals here to fulfill their role to the best of their abilities, and he asks that none of them make any selfish decisions. Bio and the others agree to Ike's terms, but to clarify, all Ike wants them to do is to crush the enemies that they find in front of themselves. So while it seems overly simple, they choose to believe in Ike's plan. Back to the present, the aerial team is continuing to lay waste to the siege team of the humans, and so far, Jiren and Fiorentina are glad that things are going according to Ike's plan, but Fiorentina can't help but worry about Sapphiro and whether she will be okay completing her task for this war by herself. Back at the strategy meeting, Fiorentina asked Ike what Sapphiro would be doing while the war was going on, and Ike told her that he has already asked Sapphiro to do something very important. It could even be said that she has the most important job out of anyone involved in the war, but Sapphiro still finds it really annoying that she is stuck doing this instead of participating in the actual war. She curses Ike for telling her to stay behind and delay the enemy's rear forces because it's an incredibly boring job for her. But it's not all bad because she just spotted a really handsome human, so she might be able to have a little fun here after all. With the ogres on the front lines now and the marksmen slowly whittling down the numbers of the soldiers that managed to make it into the city, things aren't looking good for the human soldiers. They were so confident in the beginning because they knew they had the numbers advantage, but even with that advantage, they are still struggling to make progress. One of the human soldiers goes to report to the general that they have managed to break through the castle walls, but the enemy counterattacked with an incredibly powerful attack, so the squads that infiltrated the walls were immediately wiped out. The general is enraged, so while the vice commander thinks they should probably withdraw fully for now and regroup, the general demands that the troops launch an all-out offensive attack. The vice commander thinks doing that now would be too risky, but the general simply doesn't care. If they can't win at 5-on-1 fights, then they'll just have to make it 10-on-1 instead, and that doesn't work. He's willing to increase the number to 20 soldiers per demon. The vice commander tells him that what he is planning to do is really risky, but the general is very stubborn and refuses to listen to any other input on the matter. But contrary to the vice commander's expectations, the general says he will be joining the soldiers to lead the next charge to build morale for the soldiers. By this point, Fiorentina is shocked that the humans are still choosing to attack even after all the casualties they suffered in battle. Jiren says it will all work out in the end, and it looks like Ike's final plan is finally ready. So as the humans charge towards the city, they are shocked as the group begins to split open, and several humans fall to their inevitable deaths. The humans wonder if this might be one of the demon's magical attacks, so they ask for their mages to cancel it out. But unfortunately for them, the mage unit has already been captured. Jiren and Fiorentina are surprised since they have no idea when Ike managed to pull this off, but it isn't over yet, as Ike still has one more thing he needs to do. The general's force gets spooked by all the chaos around it, so he gets thrown off and left on the ground where Ike eventually finds him. Ike asks him if he is the commander of the human army, and now that he has the right person, he complains about how his men ended up dying while trying to pin down his location, so he's going to have to take responsibility for that. Ike warns the general that they could just kill him, and if they do, his men will retreat because none of them really want to be here. However, if the general agrees to order a retreat right now, then Ike promises not to kill him. The general gets up and tells Ike straight to his face that he must be bluffing. They can't kill him because they need him to give the order for retreat, but he was completely wrong. As soon as he refuses to retreat peacefully, like Ike wanted, the Dwarf King shows up behind him and slashes the general across the chest. He has a major grudge against the general, so he wants to finish him off immediately, but Ike uses some chain magic to hold him back. The general now realizes that Ike wasn't bluffing when he said the general would be killed if he didn't retreat, so he immediately orders all his men to retreat. All the human soldiers are confused as to why the general suddenly ordered them to retreat out of nowhere, but they aren't going to complain since this means they don't have to sacrifice their lives anymore. As Ike and the Dwarf King watch them leave, the Dwarf King mentions that they will surely return to attack again someday, so while he is grateful to Ike, he is sure Ike will regret letting the general live at some point in the future. I can't say for certain that he won't regret this later, but he doesn't care if the general decides to attack again, because by next time his army will be much stronger than it is now. But for today, this is a victory for Ivalius, and they are going to celebrate as much as possible. Jiren comes running up to Ike, but Ike doesn't appreciate being hugged so tightly, and Lilith is jealous because she should be the only one who gets to hug Ike. While she and Jiren are arguing over who deserves to be with Ike more, Sadie comes running over because she doesn't want to be left out either. And as Ike is being suffocated to death by affection, the troop leaders all talk about how much they believe in Ike. He is certainly capable enough to be their superior, but he also trusts them completely, so they could ask for a better comrade. While all that was going on at the front lines, Sapphiro was in a standoff with the rear reinforcements, but their commander told them all to back off since he knew they stood no chance of taking her down. He seems to be just as interested in Sapphiro as she's in him, so they face off with one another, but before anything happened, the declaration of retreat was made, so he says he and Sapphiro can pick this up another time. Sapphiro takes a moment to take in how proud she is of Ike for winning the war so easily, and at this rate, it won't be long before he gets promoted to even higher ranks within the demon army, but Sapphiro will let the demon lord decide how high Ike will climb. Sapphiro congratulates Ike for successfully defending the city against the invasion, but Ike refuses to accept all the praise, saying the victory was all thanks to the hard work everyone put in. He's just humble like that. Anyway, now that Ike has had a 20-minute break, Sapphiro says she's going to assign him his next crucial tasks. She wants him to go over to Zenobia, and she explains that the humans are likely going to launch an all-out attack in the near future, so they need to prepare for that possibility. The cause for her assumption is the fact that they just defeated the Alliance, and their victory is sure to provoke a more drastic response from the humans. The problem the demon army is facing now is a lack of supplies, and while Ike's farming method has certainly increased the number of crops they can grow here, it still isn't enough to feed the entire army. Avalius has been running low on food ever since the war intensified, so she wants Ike to talk to the Federation about a trade treaty. She's always giving him impossible jobs to do, but this time he has a way out as he mentions that humans would never agree to negotiate with demons directly. Sapphiro agrees with him, but she reminds Ike that he is a human, so that won't be an issue for him. Ike has nothing to say to that, so he now has no choice but to go on the trip, so he heads back to his office to prepare. As soon as news of his trip reaches Jiren and Lilith, they come running into his office to ask if he is really going all the way down to Zenobia. Ike confirms it and says he will be gone for a while, so Jiren offers to go with him and act as his bodyguard, but Lilith cuts him off and says Ike should take her instead since she would be much better as a travel companion. They start arguing over who is going to go with Ike, but Ike interrupts both of them and says he wants them both to stay behind in Avalius. Neither of them likes the sound of this, but Ike says he has important jobs for them to do, so he really needs them here. He says Avalius has been becoming popular lately, so they've been getting a lot of new refugees and the like, so he wants Lilith to take care of any trouble that arises, while he wants Jiren to be in charge of managing the city. A few hours later, Ike is out in the woods with Sadie on his way to the Zenobia. And Sadie is happy she gets to spend some alone time with Ike, but she also feels kind of bad for Jiren and Lilith since she knows how badly they wanted to come and Ike didn't even wait to say goodbye. That aside, Sadie has never been to Zenobia, so she asks what kind of country it is. However, Ike corrects her and says Zenobia isn't actually a country at all. It's actually a trading city to the south, which is the head of the Trade Federation. As a trade town, Zenobia has an abundance of crops that are unique to the south, as well as a large selection of herbs and spices. Sadie is happy because that means they can buy a lot of fruits and veggies from Zenobia, and while she's not wrong, Ike tells her it goes a little further than that. Zenobia has everything, and by everything, Ike means this is where they can acquire the supplies that will determine the fate of the demon army. Sadie asks if it is really possible for demons and humans to form a treaty, and in all honesty, Ike doesn't think it's likely to happen, but that is why he brought Sadie in the first place, to show that humans and demons can get along. While riding, Ike hears a commotion coming from up ahead, and it looks like a group of bandits is attacking a carriage. The guards are not very effective against the bandit leader since he is as strong as 2.5 men, or at least as heavy as them, so he is able to cut down all who stand in his way. Once he has taken out the guards by the door, he opens the carriage and takes a look at the young lady inside, and he's already fantasizing about all the fun he's going to have with her. But before he does anything gross, he gets punched off screen and a bunch of his men have been tied up. Ike comes up to the carriage and tells the girl that he has come to rescue her, but after getting a good look at the girl, he realizes that she looks a lot like Sadie. It's an odd coincidence, but he doesn't have much time to think much about it as some more bandits suddenly appear, so he uses his magic to restrain the rest of them with roots, and after that's done, he goes over to the injured guards and uses healing magic to help them recover. The guard captain thanks Ike for his help and asks if there is anything they can do to repay Ike's kindness, but Ike doesn't really want anything. But just as he is about to leave, the girl from the carriage approaches him and introduces herself as Yuria, the daughter of the leader of Zenobia. She offers to give Ike a ride to Zenobia, and while they are heading there, she thanks him again for saving her. She is really impressed with the level of magic Ike is capable of as he was able to capture the Redbird so easily. Ike introduces himself as a mage from Ismuth to keep his identity secret, and he introduces Sadie as his maid. Ike asks Yuria what she's doing this far outside Zenobia, so she explains that she had an arranged marriage with a very powerful man, but it didn't work out between them. Ike is surprised that any man would decline an engagement to a girl as pretty as Yuria, but Yuria explains that she was actually the one who refused the engagement, and now that she has met Ike, she is really glad she declined. After they arrive in the city, they are brought to the office of the leader of Zenobia, and she stands to introduce herself to the man who saved her daughter. The leader's name is Eltria, but she's got a lot of work to do, so she needs to continue working while they talk. Ike thinks it is incredibly lucky that he ran into the daughter of the leader when she is the exact person he was hoping to meet, but there's still a lot of negotiating to do. Eltria asks Yuria to leave her office for a bit because there's something she would like to discuss with Ike in private, and as soon as Yuria is out of the room, Eltria asks what a member of the demon army wants with her. Ike is shocked that she could tell that he is a member of the demon army, so he asks her what led her to that conclusion. Eltria explains that she knows there are no mages from Ismuth with Ike's name, but she also knows that Ike is incredibly powerful. There's no way his name wouldn't be known if he were truly from Ismuth, and during a time when the demon army is battling with the Alliance of Kings, for a mage like him to come here while lying about his origins, it could only be because he is from the demon army. Although it is pretty rare to see a human in the demon army, so there are still a lot of things that don't add up for her. Ike explains that he's indeed a human, but he was raised by the undying King Ramerg, so he also considers himself a demon. However, that doesn't mean he has completely abandoned his humanity. Eltria asks Ike what he wants with her, so he explains that he was hoping to form a trade treaty between the Federation and the demon army. Eltria has never heard of a trade treaty being signed with demons before, but why would she even agree to that when the goal of the demons is to wipe out humanity? Ike assures her that while that may have been the case in the past, things are different now because the reason he fights is to bring about coexistence between humans and demons. Eltria had heard that the current demon lord is different, but there's no way of knowing if the demon army will just go back to the way it used to be eventually. Ike is adamant that the demon army won't revert to its old way, but he has no way of proving that, so Eltria says she has nothing more to discuss with him on the matter. She asks Ike if he has any last words before he leaves, so he plays his last card and tells her, "I heard you got a pirate problem. Well, I can fix that." At first, Eltria isn't all that convinced, but then she recalls that the pirates have been a huge thorn in her side for a long time, and the damage they caused is equal to a city's annual budget, so she says she will consider Ike's proposal if he can get rid of the pirates, and she has a condition to add to it. She will only agree to Ike's treaty if he also gets married to Yuria. Ike is shocked to hear this, and Sadie is having a stroke or something because Eltria's request was completely unexpected. Ike tries to get her to reconsider since he is a member of the demon army, but that's precisely why Eltria wants Ike to marry Yuria. He is smart, he is loyal, and with his skills he is guaranteed to end up as the leader of the demon army someday, so she wants to build a relationship with him now. Just then, someone runs into the room to inform Eltria that the pirates are attacking the port again, so they need to act quickly. Down at the port, the pirates have drifted their ship into port and have begun to pillage and plunder all the good and women in the immediate vicinity, while they kill all the men. The pirates are led by Kurosa the Pirate King, and there isn't much time before they do even more damage to the city, so Eltria asks Ike if he will agree to her terms or not. Ike ends up agreeing, so he runs down to the port because it's not like he knows how to use teleportation, and by the time he arrives, the pirates have already destroyed the port and left. Ike finds the guard captain amongst the rubble, and after helping him up, he is informed that the port was attacked by a single pirate ship. That's a lot less than Ike was expecting, but the guard captain tells him that the pirates shouldn't be underestimated because their leader, Kurosa, is a mage and he always attacks when they least expect it. Since the pirates are long gone by now, Ike suggests they prepare for the next time the pirates attack and launch a counterattack. While preparations are being made, Ike is approached by Yuria, and she says she has something important to talk to him about. It is regarding their marriage, and Ike assumes she must be against the idea, but on the contrary, Yuria is elated because she fell in love with Ike from the moment he saved her, so she really wants him to be her husband. Ike is shocked that she could feel so strongly about him when they literally met less than 12 hours ago, but Yuria's feelings are genuine. Ike starts trying to explain that he doesn't dislike Yuria, but it might be too sudden for them to be getting married. Sadie has been watching the whole thing from the door, and she's amazed at how confident Yuria is with her marriage proposal when she just met Ike. But Sadie is also a bit jealous since she doesn't get to marry Ike, so she decides to go out shopping to do something productive. While she's out, she gets spotted by a member of the pirates that was hiding in the city, and he thinks she is Yuria because they look alike, so he sneaks up behind her when she walks down an alleyway and knocks her out. Sadie later wakes up on the pirate ship, and she hears the pirate talking about how he plans to hand her over to the captain so he can get a promotion, but she doesn't want to stick around to find out what they will do to her, so she starts running in an attempt to make it back to Ike. However, as she makes it out onto the front deck, she realizes that she is stuck in the middle of the ocean, so she is screwed. The captain comes out to see what all the commotion is about, and when the pirate tells him that he successfully captured the daughter of the Zenobia leader, the captain takes one look at Sadie and can tell that she isn't Yuria. But he's still going to keep Sadie because he's been wanting to get a maid anyway. News of Sadie being captured reaches Eltria, and she already knows it must have been the work of the pirates, but by now they've most likely fled out to sea, so finding them will be very difficult. Ike enters the room and says he will handle the search himself, But to do it, he is going to need to borrow one of Eltria's ships. Eltria agrees to give him a ship, so once everything is prepared, Ike sets sail to find Sadie and rescue her before something bad happens. Meanwhile, on the pirate ship, Kurosa forces Sadie to wear a maid outfit that he personally picked out, and Sadie is embarrassed to be wearing something so revealing. She asks Kurosa why he is making her wear this, so Kurosa tells her that she is now his maid. So her job is to do whatever makes him happy, and right now, seeing her dressed like that makes him very happy. Sadie recalls how her relationship with Ike first started and how he told her that as his maid, she will need to cook and clean for him. She still didn't have much of a choice then, but at least Ike sincerely wanted to protect her. So even if she is stuck here with Kurosa, she would still rather work as a maid than whatever degenerate stuff he has in mind. She asks Kurosa if she can just cook a meal for him instead, and Kurosa actually likes the sound of that, so he tells Sadie that she can go cook whatever she wants. While Sadie is in the kitchen, she realizes that she can't just sit around and do nothing. So she comes up with a plan and asks the pirates assigned to guard her if she can have some alcohol. She tells them it will enhance the flavor of the meal, so they see nothing wrong with giving her a mug full as long as it means the boss gets a tastier meal. Now that she has what she needs, Sadie pours some alcohol over the steak, and predictably, the whole thing erupts into flames. The guards try to step in to get the fire under control, but in all the chaos, Sadie takes the opportunity to splash one of the guards with alcohol and set him on fire. While the other guard is distracted by his burning friend, Sadie makes a break for the door, and by the time the guards finally put out the fire, she's nowhere to be found. Sadie has managed to escape for now, but she needs to avoid being spotted, so as she notices two pirates talking, she hides herself among the cargo until they leave. Once the coast is clear, she comes out and takes a look inside one of the crates. Within it, she finds all the treasures that had been stolen from the town during the last attacks, so she feels obligated to inform Ike of her discovery, but how she'll actually do that from the middle of the ocean is another issue entirely. She's about to give up hope, but then she notices a candle nearby, and arson isn't really illegal when it's against pirates. A little while later, we see Kurosa in his quarters getting ready to do some devious things to Sadie when she gets back. But instead of Sadie, one of his crew members comes in and tells him that he has some terrible news. The ship is currently on fire, and by a lot, so the crew is scrambling to put it out before the entire ship sinks. Sadie does this in hopes that the flames will help Ike find her, but until then, she needs to do her best to stay hidden from the pirates. They know Sadie must have been behind this after her little cooking incident, but they lost sight of her a while ago and can't find her since she's currently hiding in a barrel. Sadie nervously listens as the pirates say they are going to go look somewhere else, but as soon as she opens the barrel to check if the coast is clear, she is horrified to discover that the pirates were just baiting her into coming out of hiding. They're pirates, so of course they knew to check all the barrels, and now that they've found her, they kick Sadie out of the barrel and plan to make her suffer for what she has done. Before they could get any closer, Sadie grabs the barrel cover and tosses it at one of the pirates' face, creating enough of a distraction for her to start running away. She has faith that Ike will come to save her if she buys enough time, but as she is running, one of her legs gets caught in a magic trap, so she falls over. The one who stopped her is Kurosa, and while he doesn't want to kill her, she did set fire to his ship, so he has to punish her in some way. For now, he decides that he will just chop off Sadie's leg to teach her a lesson. So he orders one of his pirates to do it, and the guy starts walking towards Sadie with an axe. Sadie is unable to move or defend herself, but luckily, as her leg is about to be slashed, a powerful wind sends the pirate high into the sky, and that fall height certainly looks fatal. Kurosa notices that there's someone else on the ship, so he asks the intruder to identify himself. The intruder is revealed to be Ike, and he says he promised to protect Sadie, so he will make the pirates pay for kidnapping her. Sadie runs over to Ike, so Kurosa orders his men to attack. However, Ike calls down a lightning strike that electrocutes them until they are skeletons. The survivors try to continue the attack, but Ike simply uses his magic to shield himself before using wind magic to toss all the pirates into the water, and from the look of it, they clearly can't swim. Now that most of the pirates have been dealt with, Ike turns to Sadie and asks if she is alright. She is happy that he came to save her, but at the same time, she feels like she's being a burden to Ike. She was technically just his slave, so he could easily discard her at any time, but Ike has never thought of it that way. To him, Sadie is his dear maid, so he would never dream of abandoning her for any reason. Ike had been sailing for a long time while looking for Sadie, and he would have had a hard time locating her if not for the fire she started. Just then, Ike and Sadie hear Kurosa acknowledge that Ike is clearly no ordinary mage, but in the next moment, they are caught in the middle of a massive explosion. Ike manages to defend himself with a magic shield, and Kurosa can appreciate Ike's skill, but Sadie was kidnapped fair and square, so she belongs to him now. Kurosa then casts a powerful water spell, so Ike grabs Sadie and tries to escape, but he can't outrun the spell and is forced to block it. In the process, a hole is torn through the ship, so Ike jumps inside with Sadie to hide. Kurosa thinks Ike's attempts to hide are pointless because there's nowhere to run when you're stuck in the middle of the ocean. He fires another blast at Ike, and this time it looks like it was a direct hit. However, as Kurosa goes to check if he can spot Ike's body in the water, he is shocked as Ike rises up with a water spell of his own. He tells Kurosa that his time as a pirate has come to an end, and in the next moment, Ike blasts Kurosa to smithereens along with his entire ship. The blast can be seen all the way from the ship Ike came here with, and Kurosa soon comes crashing down after being knocked unconscious from Ike's attack. The crew is shocked to see that Kurosa was actually defeated, and they realize this was the work of Ike as he returns to the ship and tells them that he has found Sadie, so they can all go back to the port now. Once Kurosa and the surviving members of his crew have been rounded up and restrained, Ike tells Sadie that she is the only reason they were able to accomplish this. If she hadn't created that fire signal, then Ike would have never been able to locate the ship and defeat Kurosa. Back in the town, Eltria is surprised when she is informed that Ike has defeated Kurosa, and furthermore, he managed to capture him alive. She finds it odd that a member of the demon army would be so averse to killing, but who is she to judge? Ike has kept his end of the bargain by stopping Kurosa, so she will honor their agreement and grant Ike the trade treaty he wanted, but she's still going to keep it secret, because she would rather not antagonize the Alliance of Kings for now. Ike is fine with the treaty being a secret as long as he can pipeline necessary supplies to the demon army, and since they've come to an agreement on that, Eltria wants to discuss the actual terms of the treaty. Meanwhile, the demon army that was sent on an invasion is suffering a lot of setbacks. Sapphiro is wounded, so while she is being healed, she asks about the food situation. They barely have 3 days worth of food rations left, and there was almost no food left within the walls of the city, so the troops are hungry and morale is low. Sapphiro realizes that this may have been a trap by the enemy to lure them and keep them trapped within the city while they all starve to death, and since they don't have much food left, Sapphiro decides to go on an all-or-nothing offensive attack. She is advised against doing this since she is still injured, but they don't have many other options since they can't just wait around until they starve. Later that night, Ike is at a party held in honor of Sadie and Ike defeating Kurosa, and Sadie comes running up to compliment him on his outfit. He tells her she looks great as well, but he thought she would be resting. She's been through a lot in the past day, but Sadie says there's no way she could miss a party held in their honor. Just then, Yurga spots Ike, so she comes running over and wraps her arms around him because she's glad to see him. She asks Ike why he left without saying anything to her, but Sadie gets her attention and mentions that she can't be acting like this in public even if they are engaged. Yuria realizes she may have gotten a little excited, so she steps back from Ike to give him some space. Sadie then walks up to Ike to reposition his jacket, and from the way the two of them act around each other, Yuria is starting to realize that Ike might see Sadie as more than just his maid. The reception is about to begin, so everyone heads inside, and the guests at the party immediately recognize Ike as the man who showed up in town, got engaged to the daughter of the president, took down the strongest pirate, and refused to elaborate further. Ike, Yuria, and Sadie all head up to the second floor where Eltria is waiting, and once she spots them, she compliments Yuria on looking especially cute today and asks Ike to take good care of her from now on. Ike is confused as to what she means, so Eltria explains that the treaty may have been finalized, but Ike is going to need to fulfill Eltria's other condition and get married to Yuria. Just then, an announcement is made revealing that this party is actually a betrothal ceremony for Yuria and Ike. I wasn't expecting things to move so quickly, but Eltria tells him that if he refuses, then she's going to call off the treaty, so it looks like he doesn't have much of a choice here. However, before the ceremony can officially begin, a blinding light fills the hall, so no one but Ike is able to see right now. And through the light, the Demon Lord appears and tells Ike that he has to return because Sapphiro is in serious danger. Darrakuten explains that Sapphiro managed to conquer Alesta, but it turned out to be a trap by the Alliance. The enemy lured her inside the castle and then surrounded the city, so there is no chance of escape. Ike asks how many enemy troops there are, and Darrakuten answers that there are around 5,000, but there is very little time, so Ike needs to act quickly. She has done everything she can to get Ike's brigade ready to be deployed, and before you say it, yes, she has the power to go save Sapphiro on her own, but she wants Ike to be the one who does it. Outside Alesta, General Rudel is informed that the city is sure to fall sooner or later with how much pressure they've been put under, so Rudel decides to lead the next attack team. Meanwhile, within the city walls, Fiorentina is doing her best to hold off the human army forces and orders the remaining ogre soldiers to do their best to hold the humans off so they don't get overrun in here. Unfortunately, the humans have bowmen among their ranks, so they are able to shoot down a lot of the ogres before they even have the chance to fight. Fiorentina managed to shield herself from all those arrows, so she charges forward at the human soldiers, and begins taking them out one by one. She might still be able to take out the humans even if she's on her own, but in the next moment she gets struck by a bolt of lightning from a human mage. The man praises Fiorentina for being pretty tough, but this is as far as she is going to go while he is around. Back at Avalia's, Ike and Sadie arrive via teleportation magic, and Sadie is impressed with how convenient teleportation magic is, but she's much more happy that Ike's betrothal to Yuria got postponed. Although Ike still intends to return to Zenobia since he can teleport back there anytime he wants to. A few moments later, Jiren comes running into Ike's office as soon as he realizes Ike has returned. It looks like he is really worried about something. So Ike asks him for the details of the situation, and Jiren explains that the Alliance of Kings launched an all-out attack on Avalius while Ike was gone. The city is in terrible condition, but the people have been badly injured during the attack, and I can't believe the Alliance would attack Avalius as well. The city would have been completely taken over if they weren't saved, and though it may sound hard to believe, Jiren tells Ike that the one who saved Avalius was a young girl. This girl was incredibly strong and took out all the enemy forces all by herself. Ike understands the situation now and tells Jiren that he will be heading to Alesta immediately so he can support Sapphiro, so he needs to know how many troops are available to leave right now. Jiren says that around 100 troops were wounded during the last battle, so they only have around 500 that are in good fighting condition. But they still need to leave a number of soldiers here in case they are attacked again, and his estimate of 500 is probably an overestimation. He asks Ike how many soldiers the enemy has, so Ike tells him that they are up against 5,000, and to be frank, their chances of victory aren't looking good. Things would have been easier if the other brigade leaders were here, but they all have other assignments elsewhere, so they are going to have to go into battle alone. Just then, Gunther enters Ike's office and says he might be able to repay his debt to Ike by helping him out with his problem here. Ike tells Gunther that there's no need for him to do anything since all the guns he and his people made were more than enough to repay Ike, but Gunther feels obligated to do something more after all the kindness Ike has shown him. Along with craftsmen, there are also dwarven warriors here numbering in the hundreds, so they will be able to serve him well in battle. Ike asks if Gunther is really alright with this since the battle he's fighting has nothing to do with the dwarves, but on the contrary, Gunther is very invested in the outcome of this battle. If the demon army wins and unifies the world, then it would benefit the dwarves greatly as Ike already promised to make a country for them. Ike acknowledges that he made that promise, but the demon army is struggling right now, so he might end up not being able to fulfill it. Gunther says he doesn't mind because if the demon army somehow loses, then it is what it is, but Ike gave a home to all the dwarves that were wandering the land, so if nothing else, Gunther wants to stick with Ike to the end to repay him for that. Ike thanks Gunther and agrees to accept his help, but it looks like Gunther isn't the only one who wants to offer Ike assistance as all the uninjured humans of Avalias are also willing to help him fight. Ike asks them if they are sure they want to fight alongside him since it would mean they are fighting on the side of the demon army. The people tell Ike that they don't know how long this war might end up lasting, so they want to fight with their own hands and protect their homes. The previous ruler of Avalias imposed impossible taxes on the people, and it had gotten so bad that they were working themselves to death just to meet quotas. But under Ike's rule, life in this town has become much better than it ever was before. Their resentment towards demons has long since faded, especially after the last battle when demons actively sacrificed their lives just to make sure that humans were able to make it to safety. Without Ike's intervention, the people may not have lived to see this day, so they owe him at least this much for giving them a better quality of life. Jiren is still against the idea of accepting help from humans, but Lilith knocks him to the ground for having the audacity to try and tell Ike what to do, and Sadie jumps in to roast him for his foolish behavior as well. By the time they are done with him, Jiren is lying on the ground and questioning his life choices while Ike addresses everyone who said they would join him in battle. He says he will split their forces into two and have one group go to Alesta with him, while the other group will stay here and protect Avalias, but he has some special instructions for the group that stays behind. He tells them that it is possible that the Alliance of Kings will attack again while Ike is gone, and if that happens, Ike knows damn well that they aren't going to be able to win, so he tells them to surrender immediately. If they try to resist, the Alliance will brand them as traitors and treat them with no mercy, maybe even executing them altogether, so under no circumstances should they antagonize the Alliance of Kings. The next morning, Ike and his troops move out to begin their journey to Alesta, and it's going to take about 4 days to get there by land. Thanks to the support of everyone, the size of Ike's squad has grown. But the enemy at Alesta still has him outnumbered by a lot, so he needs to think of a strategy to overcome that disadvantage, and he just hopes Sapphiro and the others are able to hold out until he can get there. Meanwhile, in Aleste, Sapphiro is trying her best to keep the humans at bay, but they are slowly being overrun due to the vast difference in numbers. Sapphiro needs to find a way to separate the soldiers within the wall from those outside the wall, otherwise it won't be long before the demons are defeated. As she hovers over the battlefield, she considers calling in a meteor strike, but she can't do that until the orcs are out of the way because she does not want to cause any casualties. She decides to target the troops outside the wall instead, but as she is heading over to them, she is blasted out of the sky and sent falling to the ground by the human mage. He orders his men to surround and capture Sapphiro, but Sapphiro isn't going to let herself go down like this, so she casts a vine spell that grabs hold of all the soldiers so she can make her escape. She uses the vines to shield herself from the human mage's attacks as well, so she's able to flee to a nearby rooftop, but all the constant use of mana is taking its toll on her body. She tries to hang on a little longer so she can take out the soldiers beyond the wall, but as she is in the middle of casting her spell, she gets shot through the chest by General Rudel and falls to the floor where she is later captured. By the following morning, Sapphiro's troops have pretty much all been wiped out and the soldiers are now trying to figure out which body parts they should take to get the best rewards. One of the demons happen to still be alive, so it gets up and tries to at least take out these unsuspecting humans. However, it gets burnt to a crisp by the human mage who really enjoys his job. Sapphiro has been locked up in the dungeon and Rudel is heading down there to see her. The man in charge of watching her assures Rudel that Sapphiro is still alive, but he suggests that they kill her immediately since there's no reason to keep her alive. Rudel mentions that he has met Sapphiro before, and Sapphiro recalls that he was that soldier that she delayed during the first battle with the Alliance. She's kind of regretting the fact that she didn't try to kill him back then, but there's nothing she can do about it now. Rudel mentions that he has heard a lot about one of Sapphiro's subordinates, and he is sure no good subordinate would stand by if their commander got captured. Sapphiro realizes that Rudel intends to use her as bait to lure Ike in and kill him as well. Rudel reveals that he has orders to eliminate all the members of the 7th Brigade, but until the day that he has taken everyone else out, he will ensure Sapphiro's safety as a professional courtesy. In the meantime, Ike and his group are making their way to Alesta, and at the same time, Ike is trying to come up with a strategy that doesn't result in his team getting wiped out. After multiple days of travel, Ike's group is taking a break and Ike is still working on a winning strategy when Gunther decides to pay him a visit. Gunther explains that the demons and humans have all learned to work together, and all the prototype weapons Ike requested have been made. Ike thanks him for all his help, but Gunther says he doesn't need any praise, although there is something he wanted to ask. He's not in a hurry to begin fighting or anything, but since they are pretty close to Alesta, he was wondering when Ike would give the battle announcement. Ike tells him that the situation is still dire, which is why he sent Gyron to do some recon so he will know what they are getting themselves into. By the time Gyron returns from his recon mission, he has terrible news to share with Ike. He takes Ike to a spot so he can look at the city walls, and as he does, he sees Sapphiro's clothes being hung from a pole. And while this definitely means Sapphiro was defeated, Ike believes she must still be alive. As they were on their way here, Ike had been worried that Sapphiro might have already been killed, but the fact that it's just her clothes and not her actual body must mean she is still alive. Feeding 5,000 men isn't easy, so the Alliance no doubt wants to end the battle as soon as possible, and the quickest way to do that is to lure in the other brigade members with bait that can't be ignored. However, even if they know that Sapphiro is alive, they have no idea what her current state is or if she is being tortured as they speak, so even if they know it is a trap, they still have no choice but to attack in order to save Sapphiro as soon as possible. They need to discuss their strategy before they begin their attack, but before that, Ike is going to need some help from Gunther, Lilith, and Gyron. And once everything is set up, they'll launch their attack at dawn the next day. This was the end of episode 11. Subscribe to not miss the next part.